Hello there, listener. This is Barely Qualified. I am Morgan. Alongside me, as always, is Ryan. And we are barely qualified to talk about Formula One. Ryan, it's the summer break. We're going to talk about Formula One nonetheless, but there's not been a lot going on racing-wise. Lots in the news, though. Lots of little things. We've not spoken to each other for a little while. Not for any other reason, just than we're busy individuals. And we've got a question or two to sort of get through, a bit of a mid-term school report, and also a question around which eras were the best and maybe the worst for each driver. So a lot to get through on the pod, which is exciting. We're back.
Yes, we've had a little break, as everyone has. So I think we sort of were planning. If you heard previous podcasts, we were probably excited about just doing the podcast, and we were going to do one every week or whenever there's a break. But actually, it's quite nice actually just doing the one sort of mid-season report, as you say, followed by a few other things, and a chance obviously for us to catch up as well. Like I say, we haven't spoken. You've been doing your things, I'm sure. I've been doing mine. But yeah, I mean, that is what the summer break is, isn't it? Everyone's on a break. So, everyone's on holiday doing their thing. So yeah, what have you been up to then, mate?
Great question. I've been playing an awful lot of softball. Shout out to my softball peeps. My team, the Fly Ballers, played in the British National Championships, won every single game in the group stage, which was fantastic. And then we played in the last ball tournament, which is the last softball tournament of the season. And we won every game in that and won the whole thing, which was fantastic. So a lot of softball, quite a bit of golf, and just a lot of relaxing, which is nice. I've had a lot of visitors come to stay as well. For some reason, this has been the period where everyone comes to stay in my flat in London. But there we go. How about yourself? What have you been up to?
Yeah, we actually sort of had a bit of a quiet period actually in my daily work. So I've had some extra days off than what I would usually have, which has been nice. So those of you who don't know, I've moved to the seaside town of Southsea. Just been enjoying the beach. Yeah, down the beach. We've obviously had, I think we're up to 5 heat waves now. Probably should just call it
weather.
Should call it a heat wave. Let's just call it a heat wave this summer, like we used to. Remember those times when we used to say, had a heat wave this summer? Amazing. Went on for like 2 months. Brilliant. So I'm going to call it a heat wave, and just enjoying that. So I've been down the beach, been in the sea, evening swims, bought myself a paddleboard. Yeah, been having a lovely time. Actually, you find how much time you do have when you haven't got, as much as we love F1, and we do a podcast, you actually realise how much of a weekend you do get back, because you're not getting through the qualifying or practices, qualifying, if it's a sprint weekend, the sprint qualifying, the sprint, the race, the aftermath. It's been, the weekends have actually been, I felt like they've been a lot longer than what they usually would be if we've got a race on. So, enjoyed the time off. Had a couple of visitors myself as well. So, but I am eager to, I've missed the racing. So, and I've missed this, Morgan. So I missed my routine, of logging in and doing our podcast. So
and looking like a pair of idiots on the internet for other people's pleasure, or maybe nobody's pleasure. Like
stroll video, still going strong, still going strong out there.
I still get likes.
Keep on coming in. The comments keep on coming.
Yeah.
The Canadian Grand Prix. How long ago was that? Get over it, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously slightly different. I've got stuff on the agenda in the notes. I've got down here that we're obviously doing the team/driver reports, their school report, their half-term report, rating the first season in general, whether that's the FIA. We've obviously spoke about many things they've done wrong, rules. We've spoke to that until the cows come home. So probably won't spend too long on that. If you want to hear what we think of the rules, if you want to hear what we think of the FIA this season, listen, watch the previous episodes. There's plenty of it there. each week. I've got news written down here, which I know that you just said there's a bit of this. Don't really think there's been that much, although we have had our first sacking. Preview for the next race, Zandvoort, predictions, and as you say, the question of drivers in eras gone by, and
I was thinking of proposing to you, and indeed to you, listener / watcher, that the way that we could probably tackle those at the same time. So we could kind of do. My theory was we could do reverse championship order, go through all the drivers with their half-term report, and then a kind of a we'll rank them. I think F to A star, as we have here in England.
You're
Not
thinking
having
what
any
I'm
of that
thinking.
S tier rubbish. We're not American over here. Like F to A star for all the drivers, and then I think that'll probably, as part of that discussion, we can talk about whether this is their era or what is their best era. I think we can sort of go through that in a very collaborative sort of way,
Yes,
and then maybe repeat that for the teams. Less
Well,
so with
I've got one even better for you, mate.
Oh,
How
on, then.
about we go through the teams in reverse order?
Okay.
And we go team, driver, and then the three questions or whatever questions we have, which is how their season's going, what they need to do to improve, is this era suited them? If not, what one did.
Yeah. All right.
So
love
we've
that.
kind of got like a 3-4 question for each driver, definitely. The teams obviously are governed by those two drivers, while we then dabble into what the teams might be doing wrong. If it's, for instance, Aston Martin, not much the drivers could have done there.
No, sure.
So,
and actually, whilst we're there, I think we'll probably hit the news for those drivers and teams as it comes up.
So with the questions, any news that's on that team / drivers, we can then bring that up as well. So we just purely stick to the teams and the drivers and all the things that we've got down here, and we take it individually as we go up. So that sounds like a good
and we
a good plan.
Can we ignore the FIA? Can we just give them the F? We don't need to talk about all the reasons why they got the F, because we'll be here for forever and we'll never get to talk about this. So we'll just give them an F and move on.
Yeah, no. Like I say, they're not really having their report. They're just going to get battered every week by us anyway. So, So I'll move it in a little bit of an order here so I don't get confused. So first up, then let's start. You said you want to do it in reverse order, yeah?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, I mean, I shouldn't have to look this up. I'm assuming Cadillac are.
You are assuming correctly.
Plumb last.
The only team without a point, and indeed, as you said, the one bit of sort of team news that came out from the break, is that they fired their technical or their principal or whatever his job title was.
Team principal, yeah.
Seemed very, very harsh to me. I think that actually Cadillac have done generally quite a good job for a brand new team. You could argue that Audi came in and they obviously had the advantage of having the history of Sauber, but they did also build their own engine. So maybe you could say, well, look at what Audi have done and compare that to Cadillac. But no, I don't think Cadillac have done badly, and I'm not sure necessarily. Like, I thought it might have been like a personality thing or something like that. But when I read what it was about, they were like, yeah, no, they were just not happy with the progress. It's like, what did you expect after? Did they expect to have a point by now? Because without luck, I genuinely don't think it was very feasible for them to necessarily be fighting for points.
Yeah, so the team principal, I was just trying to find his name actually. So Graham Loudon.
That's the one.
I actually did a podcast shouting out other podcasts as we usually regularly do on this podcast, but high performance podcast, punt it. So he did a interview on there, and I actually really enjoyed it. He talked a lot about how he set up, how he'd been brought in to set up Cadillac. He's obviously been at previous teams throughout the years in F1, and he sounded very very interesting, very assured of what he was doing. To me, he sounded like he completely knew what was needed. I think his reputation is of setting up new teams. And I've heard lots of people say like, well, that was his job. He was always going to go, but yeah, I didn't think he would go halfway through the first season. Like I thought that maybe after one, possibly even two, because 2 years for a new team in F1 is still a short amount of time, and they've done phenomenally well with what they've done so far, really. And
Well, especially when you figure
time.
they found out that they were definitely going to be in Formula One. Like I want to say, I think it was definitely in 2025, right? It was like March or April or something, 2025. That was before then. They didn't know for sure if they were going to be in F1 on the grid in 2026.
And yet they spent all the money. Like in his interview, like I say, he was talking about how like they haven't planned on getting the answer. They've just gone ahead as if they are going to get in. So they like spent the money, set up facilities, employed people, put them on retainer, like all sorts. So it was a real ballsy kind of like, I know we haven't technically got the decision yet, but we're going all in.
Yeah.
And I think he spoke about actually by doing that, he thought that showed Formula One, other teams, the bosses, that they were serious. That this is we're in. So probably a good strategy, really, of pushing the decision that they finally got. And so yeah, bit of a strange one, really. I don't quite. I will probably admit that I don't know how deep you can really go into it. Like I'm assuming that they just have decided that they want to change. They think that he's done what they've needed him to do, and now someone needs to come in. I think they have got a replacement, actually.
So they already replaced him with a guy called Bodkowski.
Which I think he was at Alpine, wasn't he, previously?
Yes, I think he was.
More of a tech guy, apparently.
But I don't know, like, I mean, scoring, so effectively we're kind of scoring him as a team principal as well as Cadillac in general when we're kind of scoring them. And thinking about, what's their half-term report, part of me thinks, so the pure stats are, if you take Aston Martin away, then they were a second a lap slower than the next best car, which is a Williams, and Williams themselves have been struggling off the back of the grid as well. So there is an argument to say, look, they're a second slower than anybody else, with the exception of Aston Martin. And that, on the face of it, is not a great result. But they're within touching distance of a very established Williams team. They, for the vast majority of the first half of the season, they beat or were on a par with, but mostly seem to be beating the Aston Martins. All right, Fernando lucked into some points in Monaco, as correctly predicted by me. But apart from that, they basically finished 0-0 with Aston Martin. And I didn't think that they were that bad, really, for their first year. For me, as a team, I think you can't give them anything better than a C, that's for sure. But I wouldn't be giving them an F. I'd probably give them a D for Cadillac.
Really? Joe, I'd go higher than that. I think I can imagine how the conversation might go for Aston Martin. So thinking ahead to that, I would go for Cadillac to come into a sport like F1 and the money that is just invested, and to make God knows how many decisions of employment, the car, aero, wing time, individuals, the drivers. I think their first season, and it's difficult because we don't have any history with them, so we also can't hold them accountable, say like Aston Martin, where it's like, well, hang on, or even a Williams, you were here last season, what's happened? With Cadillac, there's no history, so for me, I think like a solid C plus or something like that, a C,
I'd be happy to acquiesce to that and say,
I think they've done pass.
If C's a pass, but like just barely, then yeah, I'll give them a C. I'll give them a C. They've done
Yeah,
okay. I don't think they've disgraced themselves, and I actually think the worst part of their season so far as a team is the fact that they decided to sack their manager this early. It feels like, when a team we love a different sport analogy on this podcast. When a team is clearly going to get relegated from the Premier League, but they fire their manager like after like 10 games or something, and you're going, why are you doing that? Because they're doing an okay job, and you know what, give them a little bit of time to sort it out and steady the ship. But the owner panics and
yeah.
thinks
I
bringing
mean,
in something new will somehow do something, and maybe it will have a little bit of a bounce for a little bit, and then they'll go back to being not very good again, because
I
that's the
mean,
level of where
yeah,
the team is.
maybe they don't need. Maybe Graham was the perfect guy to set up the structure and the foundations, and now they want a tech guy to come in to now hone in on all of the performance
Well,
and upgrades and
I think that was always the
things like
plan.
that.
I think Graham was always supposed to be just there for the beginning, but I think the beginning was always supposed to be longer than this.
Yeah,
And it
but
just
yeah,
for me it just reeks of of a bit of panicking, which is a shame because I think they've equipped themselves pretty well this year. So for me,
I mean,
it's a
do you know what?
C.
Could you look at it the other way though and say that they're not panicking, that they actually think, bloody hell, Graham's done a great job. We are ahead here. We were always going to replace you with a tech guy, and we thought that you might need a season to be within touching distance of this. But actually, you've achieved it a lot quicker than what we thought you would. We don't actually need you now because you've done your job. So do you know what? Thanks very much. On you go. We're going to get this guy in though because we're ahead of schedule, and we now want to see what he might be able to do for the second half of the season with all of the tech and all of that side
I mean,
of the team.
it's a nice theory, but
You know,
the quotes coming out from the owner slash whatever his title is, the CEO, I don't know, whatever his title is, um, Dan Tauris, who's the guy who made the decision to fire him. All of the noise he's been talking about blame culture. There's been a lot of chat about the brakes, which have been a real problem for them. They keep overheating their brakes. Those last few races of the first half of the season, they basically just they weren't even making it more than a couple laps without their brakes bursting into flames. So
yeah.
that's obviously pretty disappointing, but also like a very fixable thing, right? Like I think it's one of those things that you need to expect that to happen in the first year. You might remember this from a while ago. Do you remember when? Oh my God, I've forgotten the team. I've had a complete blank on the team. Someone will tell me. Maybe you will tell me. Remember? I want to say it was Alpine had a problem with the wheel nuts. So basically, their pit stops were taking like double as long.
Steak, wasn't it? Sauber.
Sauber, yeah, you're right. It was Stake F1 or whatever they
Yeah.
called it at that point. Yeah, and they basically their pit stops were taking like doubly as long as, and they couldn't fix it for however many races because they just couldn't get a new piece and get it manufactured and all of that. And so for a few races, their pit stops were just like 8 seconds long, and it was just what it had to be. And that can happen, and particularly for a new team. So yeah, for me, I think it's a harsh decision. And I think Graham Loudon could be quite pleased with the job that he's done, and give him a C.
Yeah.
Could
Okay.
do better.
C for the new team. So their drivers then Bottas, Perez. Yeah, it's not much to say, is it?
It's
Really,
hard.
they're there
It's
to.
hard. How do you grade them different than a C? They've not done anything bad. They've not done anything good. They haven't had the opportunity to do anything good. You've kind of just got to go give them a C.
See, I think I'd be a bit harsh on the drivers, because I think there's been a couple of, like, for instance, I think they collided in China, which is just weird because you're at the back of the grid. It's like, what are you doing? So like that was, I think it was Perez's fault. So I'd mark him down. But then you could also then say, oh, well, he's putting his stamp down. He wants to make sure he's number one, and so you kind of think, well, then some people then would appreciate the feistiness of him. Whichever way you look at that, Bottas, I
Bottas
think
has
is
been the better
just
driver out of the two of them. To be fair, I mean, it's been slim pickings, but he has been in
he's
general.
less kamikaze, I suppose, or less interested in establishing right now that he's number one. They haven't got a competitive car. Like he's probably quite chilled as he is. it really don't bother him that much. Do you know what I mean? You know, who's going to be talking about? Oh God, you know, Perez has been outperforming you, Bottas. No one's talking about that. They're just like, I mean, I couldn't tell you who's leading in head to head because no one cares. But yeah, I think that they've not really done anything. It would, I think, for me to give them. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe a C or a D for the
I
drivers.
think
But
Sergio
both of them.
probably deserves a
I'll
D.
give I'll
Thinking
give I'll
about
give
it,
Bottas a C, Perez a D.
agreed. All right, there we go.
Yeah, okay. And with those drivers, then we obviously spoke about eras. They're a tricky one as well, really, because I suppose Bottas was at Mercedes in the hybrid era and was loving life, I suppose, after replacing Rosberg, and Perez did sort of he had a great sort of time at Racing Point in their kind of final season before they turned into Aston Martin, and then he was kind of okay early at Red Bull, but then
I mean, he had
just
some
couldn't get a grip to
wins.
those car, couldn't get a grip to that with that car, could he?
No, he had some, you know, always on the street circuits did pretty well.
Exactly, it's
Had
more of
some
like a
wins.
street.
Nobody's
What's
beat
that?
Max Verstappen for a long time, and it's him who was last to do it, and he did it a few times. So
Do
you
you think
got to
they're
give him some
struggling
credit
in
there.
this? It's a bit tricky because they're in a car, they're in a team that has never competed in F1, let alone different eras. Do you think that they're struggling with this era of car, or
No, I think Perez. I actually when I did my homework on this after you set the question of what was the era, I actually had an extra category which I put down as no era, which I also put in brackets as all eras.
yeah?
And I think some drivers just like Perez is not a phenomenally fast driver at any time, but I think he can drive any car pretty well and reasonably consistently. I don't think there was, he had that win in the Racing Point. You could argue that that was maybe his best time um, in Formula One, but I think he's driven just as well in other eras, and I think he's just been consistent across all of them. So I think he's one of those drivers that just doesn't. He's very adaptable, and his lack of being extremely fast in one era means that actually he's been very consistent across all eras, but he's never really stood out as being an exceptional driver because he just doesn't have that je ne sais quoi that maybe only would appear in one generation versus another.
I think that's what we're going to probably find difficult about that question in a sense is that some of the drivers just aren't. They haven't been as focused on because perhaps they haven't won championships or they've just been a midfield driver or at the back driver. So therefore, it's difficult to really say, oh well, he was. Clearly his era is here, like saying Bottas. Well, clearly his era is the hybrid era. Well, he was in the best car in the hybrid era, of course it was. Like, but we don't actually know. I mean, it could be that Bottas hasn't really been at a top team since Mercedes, but then he hasn't done like what say a Hulkenberg has done or a Gasly has done in a lesser team and got a performance out of those cars. So potentially that could mean that Bottas is struggling since the hybrid era that he's just not he didn't really take to the downforce era, or the current one, like because he's not he's just not done anything. If you look at someone like Hulkenberg, you're talking about all eras. He would maybe fall into that. So yeah,
For
Bottas,
sure.
I probably would say is probably struggling with this era of car
Yeah,
um,
I think that's
and
probably
the
fair.
previous.
I think that's probably fair. And actually, looking at his level, like obviously, again, it's also really hard because he drove when he was driving for Mercedes. Obviously, the Mercedes was just an incredible car, and whether that was his car or not, I think anybody would have enjoyed driving it. But for a
When was he
driver
at
of his
Williams?
talents,
When he was at Williams, what was the era then?
he was well. It was pretty much it was the same era because you think that Bottas got brought in to replace Rosberg, And the Williams was pretty good at that time. Bottas was certainly the leading driver for the Williams at that time. So I would argue that whole kind of hybrid, the beginning of the hybrid era certainly worked pretty well for him at Williams. He then was, I actually think he was pretty exceptional beyond his level when he was Lewis's teammate. I think he elevated himself a bunch of times and he struggled at times, but you know, he was up against Lewis Hamilton as an unbelievable driver. So I think that was his era. I think Bottas, for me, it's pretty clear. It's the hybrid era was his. Whereas Perez, I think Perez, you could argue, I think basically that whole period, 2014 through to, the hybrid era started in like 2018, did it? Anyway, that 2014, 2015, 2016 kind of era for Perez, if you are going to nail him down, that would be my time there, which is kind of, those were the Red Bull years. I don't know what to call that era, but I'm going to call them the Red Bull years with old Seb.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I suppose we should search and find out what the era is before we need to go back. If we need to go back, some of these guys are older, so we need to go back and find out what these eras are called.
That's true. I'm sure they probably have names. 2014 to 2025 was the turbo hybrid era. Okay, fair enough. So a little bit earlier than I thought, actually, that started. Yeah, okay, so the V8s. Yeah, so Perez was the V8 era, which kind of goes up to 2013. Yeah, okay, so I'd say Perez was probably, V8. He was at his peak. He was also at his youngest then, so I guess it's hard. But yeah, that's kind of where I'd put him.
Yeah. Okay, so on to Aston Martin then. So same thing then. Team-wise, they have utterly failed this year.
Utterly failed. There's no other word for it. And
they've spent the money. They've gone big.
They've got the facilities. They got the big facilities in now as well, haven't they? And it hasn't worked for them so far.
They've got Newey. They've got the wind tunnel. They've got the new clubhouse. They've got it all.
Yeah.
And they have royally failed.
It is an F in every sense of the word.
It's an F. Fail to prepare to fail. That is what has happened here.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
They haven't got that concrete plan. They haven't even got a proper team principle. They are a bit of a mess at the moment.
Would you say the biggest mistake for them of the season, or maybe the most indicative mistake of the season, was putting Newey as the team principal? That didn't seem to make any sense. Why are you wasting his time doing this stuff that you don't get the world's best painter and then put him in charge of the buffet. You know what I mean? Let the guy paint. He's Adrian Newey. Just chain him to a bloody blueprint desk, whatever it is that he, just train to an architect's. You know what I mean? Like one of those standing desks where you do your drawings or whatever. Just leave him alone in a room to come up with batshit ideas that are going to be aerodynamically amazing, and don't get him involved in team principles crap. Terrible idea.
No, yeah, I was expecting in the summer break to hear an announcement of, a new team principal at Aston Martin. So that was a bit odd that we haven't. There's obviously Jonathan Wheatley. We've been waiting to hear that was going to happen. It's all sort of died down a little bit. That hasn't it?
It has, hasn't it? Yeah.
Odd because it was the rumours were rife. So yeah, maybe a deal just hasn't been worked out. You've had Horner rumours, all sorts, but yeah, like I say, they got a lot to do. Check out our podcast where we went through what the teams need, and you'll realise how much Aston needed. But yeah, as a team, they have really failed their drivers. On to their drivers then. The Alonso and Stroll. Stroll's got a couple of results recently against Alonso after we absolutely obliterated him in many podcasts. Alonso, I think, is 45 now, which is crazy when you think like literally the bloke's closer to 50 than he is 40 now. Like it's mental. There's whispers that he might be thinking of retiring in news related stuff. In terms of grading those guys, Stroll, it's just I'm just gonna go there again. I just think it's absolutely pointless grading him because he just shouldn't be an F1. And but I suppose if we've got to, I'll has he done anything different from what he previously done in previous years? He's at the level that I'm probably thinking he's at. For the car that he's got, I'll be generous. Maybe a E.
That's so funny. You said generous giving an E. I'll give him an E. I don't think you can give him an F because that car is so crap. And yeah, the one thing that I'm going to give him some credit for is the fact that we all know Lance Stroll is a moany Monerson and loves to throw his toys out the pram. And on the one hand, you could sort of say, well, you know, everything's so rubbish for both, just for the car in general. He can't really be beating himself up too much. And he does look like he absolutely hates being there, and he's not brought a smile, but he's also not had any tantrums or anything, which it would be quite easy to be like, guys, come on, this car is terrible, and have some tantrums. So on that alone, I'm not giving him an F, but like he's been, and he out-qualified Alonso once and maybe twice, maybe. I think it was twice. Maybe twice. He had a horrific run, but you know, hey, I'll give him an E. But he shouldn't be in Formula One, so that's fine.
And look, we go shouting to Alonso. It's not like I'm going to be like rating Alonso like massively high either.
Alonso can't be higher than a C, really. I mean, the only there's positives about Alonso. He got a point in Monaco, and in the one race where they had a car that wasn't utterly terrible, he had the one moment of I can't even call it like glory or goodness or anything, but slightly less terribleness. In being able to actually be in Q2 for once. So when he has had the opportunity, which has been basically never, he has done well. And he hasn't had a complete meltdown as well. So you also have to give him some credit for that. It would have been very easy for him to be very upset and very public in his upsetness. But he's held it together. So for me,
and he's had a child. He's had a child. I mean, you know.
And he's 45 years old.
And he's 45.
And I think he's still got it. I think he has still got it. Whether he's got all of it, I don't know. But he's still got enough there that he's still a damn good driver. So for me,
so you're going C.
I'll give him a C. Right. And hoping that this resurgence from the team means we can see a bit more from him and judge him better at the end of the season.
I was going to be quite harsh, but I won't be. I'll go with you. I'll go with a C. I was going to say D, but I'll go C. I'm kind of, I don't know, not getting a vibe from Alonso this year, but that could be because the car is so bad, obviously. So, you know, and he's totally backing my disapproval of the rules. So I'm going to give him a C as well because he's on my side of the fence.
Fair. I mean, and then we could talk about eras. I mean, Fernando Alonso is a fantastic one to talk about eras. And I wouldn't want to spend ages on every single driver. I will never finish this podcast. But obviously, his championship-winning years are the obvious ones that stand out. But also, you know, the years when he was alongside Hamilton in Mercedes were, I think, some of his best years in terms of his driving. Maybe not his best years in terms of outside of the car. And, you know, performed very well in a very disappointing Ferrari. So he really kind of has smashed it. I think you're a bit spoiled for choice when it comes to Alonso, but I don't think he's ever really set fire to anything during the ground effect era. And then obviously the new, this generation.
I mean, are we talking the V10 era, V8 era?
I think we're talking mostly I think we're mostly talking the V8s being Alonso's absolute peak, and if nothing else, I think he would say that his absolute favourite time of driving Formula One cars was probably in that era as well.
He won his championships. What year did he win his championship? 2005 and six, five and six.
Quickly Google. The thing is, I'm so bad with like years of things, and I think of like 2020, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was last year, and then I have to remember that was 6 years ago. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit bad of me.
Yeah.
Um,
Hamilton was 2007. He won the year before, then he left. So it's 2005, 2006, I think, that he won his world championships.
I mean, that just sounds. I must have been about 3 at the time. Obviously, I wasn't, but it just feels like such a long time ago. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so because it would have been him, double world champion, Schumacher before him, Hamilton wins 2000. No, sorry, Kimi wins 2007 because
Yeah, so he was 5'6". He won in 2005, 2006. And I think that whole era, like 2000,
so that would have
2000.
been V10 era.
Yeah, that would be V10 era. Yeah, okay. Oh well, we'll give him the V10 era then. That would be his peak. But again, he's a phenomenal driver. I think he's been brilliant in everything. But
Yeah, he could easily go into that category of like yeah, all eras. His absolute peak, as you say, when he won his championships would have been the V10 era. But you know, you've also talked at length in pretty much every podcast about Alonso's terrible career choices. So if he was at Mercedes, I don't even think we'd be having a conversation about him. His best era would probably be the hybrid era. You know, so
yeah, sure, sure, sure.
he's definitely a. It doesn't seem to be this year, this era, and we're obviously half a year into this era. So, but it isn't. This is not his favorite because he doesn't even like it. So, like and the reason he doesn't like it is because I think he knows it's not really for him.
Yeah, agreed.
So I
Agreed.
mean,
I
if he
don't
was
think
in if he was in a Mercedes against Kimi Antonelli, is Kimi Antonelli still winning this championship? I think so. I think so. I think I
probably,
think I
probably.
think he's because that's then it would really get into the era debate. Like Kimmy's, this is like they call it like it's the kids, the next gen. I mean, I always find it a bit strange how it works because you think you've got experience just on the eras quickly. You've got experience going through different eras, and they're all complicated in their own particular ways. So just saying that the kids' computer era, PlayStation era, all this sort of stuff, although PlayStation era must have been around in our time, so I don't really get that. But let's go with like they're just more gamers today. Okay, maybe it might suit a Kimi and a Piastri, a Norris, whatever, a Behrman, Bortoletto. I suppose more to do with the sim, really. I suppose if they are sim, but then looking at that, Hamilton gave up the sim,
Yeah,
and has then
and he's had a bit.
literally
He's had a real
had a
resurgence this year. So
resurgence. So it's all a little bit messy, but yeah, I don't think that this era is Alonso's and Stroll again. Like, why is he even in any era?
I don't.
You know what
I
I
don't
mean?
think.
Like,
I don't think we can even talk about Stroll having an era. Really.
let's give him his own era and call it the Daddy era.
Yeah.
The year that Daddy bought an F1 team and said, "Give up the PlayStation, son. I'll give you a real car."
Yeah. Yeah.
He did all that karting, won all those little championships when he was like, all those races when he was a junior. And this guy here, he's a freaking, he's a nobody in the world and got no millions. How dare I just say that about him? Be so dismissive of him. It's just ridiculous, really, absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, that's where we are. Moving on then to Williams.
Yes, and indeed we've had some news with the Williams, which is that both drivers, Sainz and Albon, have both signed on for another year, which is a bit of a coup for them because their car has been utterly terrible,
Yeah,
and they've done well to hold on to them.
I saw something about Science, but I didn't double check that. I was supposed to, but he has signed. Then has he?
Yeah, so Sainz is committed until 2027 and potentially beyond, and Albon had already agreed yesterday, I believe, to stay for for the 2027 season as well. So they're both on for next year. Which, yeah, like I said, I think it's a bit of a backing for Williams there because, like, yeah, let's talk about their car has been pretty dreadful. I think everybody has been so hopeful that Williams were making progress in all the right ways, and finally getting back something towards the front of the grid, slowly making it back there, and they've just had a complete reset. And but for Aston Martin's absolutely terrible car, they've got the worst car on the grid, and Cadillacs, of course, but they're total newbies. Like Williams have been around for an awfully long time now, and yeah, so have Doralton Capital. You know, they've been around for an awfully long time now, and they've got all the right pieces finally in place. When you know they've got a really good team principal in James Vowles, and it's just not. It's just been a really bad start to the year for them.
Do you know what? I might surprise you here because I could be really harsh with Williams, but I'm just looking at the table, and I'm thinking. So the teams I don't think should be above them based on last season, or even based over a few seasons. I don't think that Audi should be above them.
No,
definitely not. So they are underachieving there, but they are 1 point behind them, right?
sure.
So they could be eighth. You know what I mean? Like this weekend, they literally could be eighth. You know, and so they'd be above Audi. Haas shouldn't be above them either, I don't think.
No, agree.
And then there's Alpine and there's Racing Bulls, which I would say that they would be in a battle with. So
agreed, and especially
Alpine have underachieved for the last few years, and they shouldn't have been. And this year they're back to where they should roughly be.
because
And Racing Bulls have been decent.
But the reason that Alpine have had that boost to their fortunes is because they've now got the Mercedes engine.
Yeah.
But the Williams have had that Mercedes engine for a long time now. So they don't, Alpine put a Mercedes horse in the back of that motor and all of a sudden it starts galloping down the road.
But they shouldn't be, I suppose, it's not like if they were sitting behind the Alpine in seventh and you've got Racing Bulls 66 points, Alpine 61 points, say the Williams are on 59, you'd just be sitting there going midfield sort of battle, best of the rest. They're in it.
That would be a perfectly satisfactory first half of the season for me, for Williams.
Now, you could argue as well that they've probably got one of the best lineups on the grid. So the team probably is where the fault lies here. They're a well-run team. You said that it's a bit of a coup that they signed them up. Again, though, Carlos Sainz, where would he go? The only option is maybe Audi. But then they're only 1 point behind Audi. So you're kind of swapping one team that you have said, oh, I believe in the project, to then go, I now don't believe in the project. I'm going to believe in this new project, though. And then Audi, next year, they could be last. They could be, or they might, they could be just above Cadillac, say. They could be doing an Aston. Like it's not a guarantee. If you were leaving, say, Williams to go to one of the top four teams, then that's different.
Sure.
But if you're picking and choosing between Williams, Haas, Audi, Alpine, Racing Bulls, none of those other teams, maybe other than an Audi, and even an Audi, Hulkenberg's been pretty solid in that team. They're definitely not getting rid of Bortoletto. That's it. That's their future. So they'd be swapping Sainz for Hulkenberg, which,
and ultimately,
I think they're ultimately the similar standard, I'd argue. So
sure, and
and also similar age, probably.
And that's why Sainz and Albon have signed for 2027, because you're right. There's nowhere else that either of them could go realistically that would necessarily improve their fortunes. So it's a bit of a no-brainer for them to sign, I suppose. I more just mean like I know there's been rumblings about the pair of them wanting to move on and kind of losing a little bit of faith with the project, with how bad it's gone.
I mean, that's great that you think you're better than Williams and that you think you can move on. Brilliant. Where are you going to go, mate?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really great that Albon, you've got this vision that you want to win a world championship. You think you're good enough. Sainz, you think you're good enough to win a world championship. Okay, then. Well, I'll tell you what. Then go and chuck Hadjar, Max Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Leclerc,
yeah.
Russell, or Antonelli off their perch. Maybe Russell. Maybe they might have enough. I can't really see Toto Wolff giving up Russell to sign Sainz or Albon. So I think it's just a contract thing, really. Oh, I might just leave. Might take a year out actually, because this is doing my credibility no good. They probably both signed bumper new contracts, got paid more money, and they're staying with the team. And they were always going to stay with the team because you're going for bollocks elsewhere. Like you are stuck where you are. You want to be an F1, you want to be one of the 22, sign with Williams then, because you ain't going nowhere else. So just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, gosh, that's fair.
If I was James Vowles, I'm sure James Vowles was way too kind, way too nice.
Do you think he was a bit more diplomatic than you've been just there?
Probably, and he was pretty like, please guys, please stay.
But he probably, but the content was probably similar.
You want to go? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Because there's the contract, sign it or find another team.
Yeah, because we'll get some kids in. Don't worry about it. Like
you're not finding another team. You're not finding another team. So they should have been more. I mean, they're not going to, because they want their drivers. Man management. Clearly, I don't need to be doing this. I'm not their team boss, but
you're not doing your future recruitment as a team principal any favors there, Ryan. Okay, so let's grade the Williams then. Like as the season,
I just watched the Marino documentary. All right, I'm a little bit pumped up.
Okay. Fair.
That's my guy. That's my style. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That's
Combative.
He should have been at Chelsea for 20 years. He would have won loads more Premier Leagues. He would have dominated dynasty at Chelsea.
That's a
I don't even support Chelsea.
That's a different podcast altogether.
It's a different podcast.
So let's grade the Williams then. For me, it's an E.
Okay. Do you know what? That's probably fair. I've literally just said I'm not going to be as harsh on them, so yeah, I'm not. E's fair. Yeah, E's fair. They're overweight, but you have to take into consideration that they have signed up their two drivers, which is good business. It's forget everything I just said. They've signed two drivers up that is a good lineup.
Yeah.
Even though their car's not performing, and I'm sure they will do better in the second half of the season and better next year, you'd hope. So, yeah, E is probably fair. If we're talking benchmark, F for Aston is an utter fail. Williams are not far behind in their preparation, probably, but they've made improvements. They've got 11 points on the board. They could be in 8th this weekend. With a really good result, they could even be up to 7th. So I could probably see them if they bring upgrades and do well. They've got the Mercedes engine. I could probably see them finishing 7th at the end of the season. And if they did finish 7th, as I just said, although I'd like them a bit closer to the Alpines and the Racing Bulls, that would have been their battle. So they would have just sort of finished the worst that they could in that battle. So, yeah, he's good for me. Drivers, I think it's Sainz just above Albon, isn't it? So 1 point ahead of Albon. Neck and neck, really, aren't they?
6 and 5.
I'd have them both. I mean, if you're looking at Audi, who are only a point above Williams, Bortoletto and Hulkenberg have had a pretty good.
Well, Hulkenberg's only got 2 points, which isn't necessarily
which is funny, isn't it? Because
I think he's finished like 11th a bunch of times, hasn't he?
And I think, but he's been way more consistent than Sainz and Albon.
Agreed.
The points paint a different picture, but we watch the race every weekend. There's no way that I'm rating Albon and Sainz above Hulkenberg this season. So I'd go with the same as the team. They've not done anything for me, really, that stands out in particular. And if they had done like sort of one thing each, I might have given them a D. A C, they would have to have done, sort of driven the pants off of the car and done something. So I'd say an E as well. I think Albon's actually dropped off, a bit, and he's been a bit of a whinger, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Sainz has been less so, but he made some kamikaze errors, didn't he, with the blue flags recently and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's, I think
So
the whole thing at Williams is it's a combination. I think the team are not doing great, but I don't think their drivers are primed and ready in case the team bring a good upgrade. I think they're all on a bit of a low. So I'd say E across the board for all of them, team and drivers.
I would agree, but I'm going to suggest Carlos Sainz should get a D, and here's why. If you look at the Formula 1.5 championship table, which is the championship table if you removed the top 4 fastest teams, and therefore the top 8 drivers, right? And we all know who they are. So Alex Albon is 10th. He's only beating the 2 Aston Martins and the 2 Cadillacs. So, he's bottom of the pack. And so for me, an E is absolutely fair, I think, for Alex Albon. Carlos Sainz, he has 43 points in the Formula 1.5. Carlos Sainz, on the other hand, has 75 points, which is, an awful lot more, and is in 8th ahead of Hulkenberg. And I think that shows that, Carlos Sainz has kind of been close to doing well at times, and certainly been closer than Albon. I think Albon's been a bit unlucky with some retirements and stuff. But I think Carlos Sainz has done a better job than Albon and has been better through the season. I also agree. I don't think it's been his best season, like by any stretch of the imagination. So I personally would give Carlos Sainz a D and Albon an E.
Okay, all right. I've gone for E's.
Okay.
Right. We'll
leave it at that then. Come on then. Let's move on to the next one.
I mean, it's the first disagreement.
It is the first disagreement.
It's not really a big one, to be
Not
fair,
a biggie. It's only one grade, and I don't think I care that much.
Me neither.
So Audi.
The eras for those two then.
Oh, the eras, of course,
The final question. So, I actually think that the last era, the ground effect era, was actually really good for Albon. I think that's definitely been his strongest.
Agreed.
And Carlos Sainz.
I think he did. I think Carlos did very well in the ground effect era. He was. I think that was a pretty good time for him in general as well. He's
obviously was at a top team, so then he's able to do that. But it did seem to suit him well.
He was up against Charlie Leclerc, who obviously has an amazing reputation, and arguably Sainz did more than hold his own against Leclerc. Quite often beat him. So, for me, that era was peak him. You could also argue his time with Lando was pretty excellent. The pair of them were driving pretty well at that point together, and had just a great relationship. So, but I think that's a bit of more about the relationship than it is necessarily about the driving. Although I did enjoy his driving through that period. But I think when he was at Ferrari, I really feel like that was him taking his chance in a way that I'm not sure Carlos Sainz really is the sort of driver to naturally get a chance at a team like a Ferrari. And it happened to come his way that's how it shook out. And I think he took it. So for me, I would put them both in the ground effect era.
Yeah, same. Yeah, agree. Short and sweet. Right, okay, moving up to 8th then. So Audi just above Williams. So new engine, a transition from one team to another. I mean, at the beginning of the season, everyone probably would have had them just above Cadillac. So they're overperforming, I would say, based on the general opinion of most people.
Especially in an engine era. I mean, before we started, everyone was, we were talking about this being the era of engine. And so to come in with a brand new one, and there's lots of mitigating factors. They got to work on it very early, and the FIA, I think, probably helped them out by giving them some benefits that maybe the other teams didn't have. Like they literally just focused on that engine way ahead of everybody else. But it's still a brand new engine, and I think they've done phenomenally well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd go straight in. I mean, we gave Cadillac a C for doing well. I'd probably give Audi a B, you know.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a B or I think they're very close to an A, like a B plus. Honestly, like what more could you reasonably expect from that team? Their reliability has been pretty damn good um, on the engine side, again, for a brand new engine. And I think that's a huge credit to them as well. So for me, it's a B plus. If you'd have said an A, I'd have gone, you know what, yeah, I agree. But I think a B probably is fair, but a good solid B plus.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably would have gone an A if, they've obviously lost a team principal, obviously couldn't convince him to stay, could they? Which isn't isn't great. They're also on the opposite side of me of wanting to enforce these rules to stay forever. So I'm marking them down for that.
Fair.
That's the only reason they came into F1 was because of these rules. Um, they've got a seasoned team of personnel that they know what they're doing. So it's not like people in the pit stops, the engineers, the all the technical people behind that you don't see. The strategy team, they've been in F1 4 years, so and they've had good seasons, bad seasons, so they've got the experience, they've got the people there. So I'm not, they should to a point be capable of doing certain things. I think it's the fact that they've also got a hell of a lot of money, right? So it's not like they've come in there, not like a pauper of a team. Haas are still outperforming them, and they're probably half the size as they are of most of the other teams anyway. So I think a B is a good result. That's like me giving them a big thumbs up. So B for me. You agree, or you're happy with that? Should we
Yeah.
say? Drivers. We've got Bortoletto and Hulkenberg. So in the championship, as you say, Hulk is actually quite a bit further down than Bortoletto, 8 points behind him. He's on 2, Bortoletto's on 10. They, each week it's a flip of a coin, really, probably who qualifies higher, isn't it? And then whoever qualifies higher then has the more chance to get the points, probably. So I don't see much between them. It's not. I don't think I'm going to give either of them a different grade, even though Bortoletto is 8 points clear in the Hulkenberg. I'd probably just give both of those. I probably would just match that up with the team actually, and I'd give them both solid Bs. I don't think that I think they're getting the best out of the car as what they can. They've been unlucky at times with reliability, some crashes, sometimes no fault of their own. I think if I think when the opportunity is there for them to get points, they both step up. So B for me, B across the board.
It's an interesting one. I generally agree. I thought that Hulkenberg might do a little bit more this year in terms of just beating his teammate more regularly. But then I think this is more Bortoletto's era when we come on to that. So, and Hulkenberg, does have a lot more years in him, which with these modern cars is probably not such a benefit. So I want to be a little bit harsh on Hulkenberg, much as I like him, and sort of say I wanted him to do a little bit more. But then when I think about if I take his teammate out of it and I think, right, each week I'm asked to give a top 10 random person, I'm literally thinking it's either Gabby or the Hulk. And I can't really, like you said, I can't really choose between them. So just based on that vibe alone, it makes me feel like I'm being a really harsh on the Hulk to kind of expect more from him necessarily. So I will acquiesce and go with the two Bs, but I do think for me, Bortoleto is a bit of a B plus and Nico's a bit of a B minus.
Okay. Um, and then I suppose their era it's funny, isn't it? Because like you just said, Bortoleto, this is. I mean, we haven't got anything to compare. He's one. He's now one of the young drivers we've got to where there is no other era. well,
Well,
he crept into
a little bit of ground era, and
the Ground Force era.
but he's driving better this year than he's ever driven. So straight away, I mean,
Yeah.
that's all you can
Again,
say.
another massive sim racer outside of F1 as well. So this seems to be the sort of opinion amongst people that this seems to be suited to those that are very much more lots of buttons,
Video game style.
lots of tech, lots of electric, megajoules, all this. He's probably going to pick that up a bit more fluid than what the Hulk would. And also, it's worth mentioning that when we have a comparison of a young teammate to an older teammate, it's very easy to say, well, the young teammate, it's not necessarily all about the fact that they know this era better because they are computer nerds. It might not even be that. It's actually just because this is the era they're coming into. This is what they need to learn. The Hulk, Alonso, Hamilton, all these drivers, they need to unlearn.
That's exactly
things.
what I was just thinking.
So it's not just about like. Now, on one hand, you can say, well, their experience and going through different eras means they can adapt and they're used to adapting, and therefore they shouldn't fear it. And I don't think they do fear it. But that doesn't change the fact that F1 is a very methodical sort of rhythmic dance almost with the car. And if you're dancing the tango for 5 years, you don't just go and dance the salsa tomorrow and be as good at it. You've got to, then find, the car is the partner. You need to find the perfect partner. And then with that partner, the dance, you're being asked to now dance this way. Both partners then need to merge together to then do the dance perfectly. So, that
What a beautiful analogy! What a beautiful analogy!
Yeah, a lot of it needs.
I like that.
Needs to click together, doesn't it? So the era is the dance, the car is the partner. And you are, leading that. So I think that to unlearn things or to readjust is almost harder maybe than a rookie, which is why I think we've also seen this thing of like, I don't think suddenly rookies have got amazing. We've always had good breakthrough rookies and stuff, but in recent years it seems to be most rookies seem to be having an all right first season, and I think that's because the ones that came in the last era that didn't last ages and ages came in and sort of did okay straight away because, for instance, Lewis hated the Ground Force era and things, and then in this era you've got the rookies that have, some of them were in that last one, but they then come into this one. But the old dogs and the multiple era guys are trying to unlearn things and adapt and stuff. So that brings everyone a bit closer together. So yeah, for me, Hulk, he's almost had a bit of a Keanu Reeves, John Wick comeback, hasn't he? Really, there was a time when Hulkenberg was the Matrix, and he was everyone's fun guy, and then nothing until John Wick came out.
Yeah.
So he's had a bit of a resurgence in this. We're in the last era and this era, really.
Sure. For me, the thing about Hulkenberg,
he falls into the multiple. I think he.
For me, the OG Hulkenberg. So Hulkenberg came in to Williams in 2010, and he was partnering Rubens Barrichello, who'd just had that season at Brawn the year before. And he had a really fantastic debut season. He was excellent against Barrichello. He got his first ever Formula One pole position by over a second in the wet in Brazil in his debut season. And at that point, I think a lot of people just thought, yeah, this guy's going to get podiums galore, maybe wins, maybe he'll fight for a championship. And for lots of reasons, that's never happened for him. Obviously, he finally got his podium at Silverstone last year, but even the podium was eluding him for the longest of time. So for me, his absolute peak was that kind of early season, and then the first couple of years he had at Force India, which was 2011, 2012. I think he did an excellent job. So that V8 era, I think for me that was his peak. But I do agree he's had a real resurgence, and he has been, as it turns out, quite a consistent driver. But for me, yeah, OG Hulkenberg when he burst on the scene, that was his car, and he seemed to absolutely flourish in it.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm struggling. I feel like he's done decent this year in this era. I think he's done decent in the ground effect era. And as you say, you brought the stats there. Clearly, the V8 era, he's an older gentleman as well. I'm sure that if he had picked an era, I've got no doubt he would probably pick the era of the V8s that you just mentioned when he made his debut. I'm sure he was loving life then and wished he had a top team to go straight into at that time. So yeah, and then Gabby, eras for him is, I think he was okay last year, but I think he's going to be one of those like an Antonelli. If they can get a car under him, I think this era he could do very, very well. And I think that this ultimately would be probably like the Hulk in his debut era in the V8s. This would be the equivalent for Gabby. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay. On to
Haas.
Haas. Yes. So
Hasta la vista, baby.
7th in the championship, 21 points. Kind of like the top of the bottoms, really, aren't they?
Yeah,
because
would you expect them to be any higher than that? Not really. I think 7th is a pretty good position for them.
They've probably been punching above their weight for a couple of years, and this year is a bit of a reality check of where they probably should be. I mean, in theory, the actual size of that team and the money they have, although they've been in F1 a lot longer than, say, a Cadillac, there's no doubt they probably should be. If we're going to say a Cadillac, just because they're new, they've definitely got to finish last. You'd think that Haas probably would be 10th.
Yeah, I mean they're the only team that don't reach anywhere close to the budget, right? The budget cap.
Yeah. Don't have as many people, and with that, in the sense of what they spend on personnel, what they spend on their driver lineup, they're always taking generally an experienced driver who's looking for a team, along with a rookie, and that's how they've sort of been for, well, probably since they've really been in F1, really.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, finances available to them. So, I mean, to be 7th, can't see them finishing any higher than 7th. They might be able to hold on to that 7th. If they do, it's difficult, isn't it? Because last season, where they finished, and the season probably before, I think you'd be probably saying, A, star. So I think they're probably doing a solid B plus.
Yeah, I agree. My only slight concern for them is there's quite a big gap to Alpine, and there's not a very big gap to Audi, and that they could get caught second half of the season. They probably like to be on 31 points rather than 21 points. If they were on that, I'd be saying this is a really stellar season for them. Not like phenomenal, but very stellar. But I think they've done. They're consistently punching above their weight, and the fact they've done it for seasons now, the fact that it's almost become quite normal in the same way as Force India for all those years. It was quite normal that they would just do better than you thought that they ought to. But you kind of shouldn't take it away from them that they're just consistently punching above their weight. So yeah, I think for me it's been a B of a season, B plus probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking ahead as well to the drivers that we go on to. I was just looking at there thinking, and I thought something in my head and thought, no, that's harsh. But then I thought, do I say that? And you know, I mean, when do I not say it, Morgan? So I'll just say it. I'll see how it lands. You can tell me if I'm a joke of a man or whatever. I was thinking they've probably got the worst lineup in F1 driver lineup. Maybe if every single team had an equal machinery, they potentially could have the worst driver lineup in F1. So, their team sort of punching above their weight. I feel like the driver, it's a kind of arse around sort of tit way of complimenting them. I'm trying to say that their drivers are punching above their weight.
Well, so it's a good question. Who's the worst lineup on the grid? Just maybe at the start of the season, you could argue that a Liam Lawson, Arvid Lindblad, who is a complete rookie, obviously, he's had a fantastic season. Actually, the pair of them have had a fantastic season. But at the start of the year, you probably think that's quite a weak lineup.
Agree.
So Behrman, Ocon's more experienced, but then Ocon, he doesn't. He has flashes and moments of looking like a decent Formula One driver, but I've always been surprised at how he's managed to kind of continue to get contracts, and he's always ruffled a lot of feathers as well, which normally doesn't help you land seats. But hey, fair play to him. He's still in Formula One. Look, he's only got 3 points. He's behind both Williams drivers, and we said how crap their car is. So for me, some of that isn't Ocon's fault. But he's only got 3 points. For me, I actually think Esteban's had the season actually that I would have expected him to have, and it's Behrman that's having. Anytime there's an opportunity to get big points, it seems to be Behrman who's the one who's doing it. So I think
to be 1 point behind Alpine is impressive.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And without those points, then
and
then
five
Haas is struggling.
5 behind Lindblad as well, to be fair. So he's impressive. I mean, clearly Behrman is a talent, and I was very careful in saying driver lineup because, for instance, Alonso for us would carry Aston Martin predominantly in that lineup.
Sure.
But I think I still would take an Alonso and a Stroll lineup over an Ocon and a Behrman.
Because. Especially at the start of the season, because you're going Alonso with ton loads of experience, and you just spin Stroll off, right? You'd rather take one guaranteed sure thing rather than
one
two
world-class driver,
right? Versus two that Ocon, who's definitely not going to be world class now, and one who maybe could be, but is a risk,
but is ultimately still ultimately a rookie.
Yeah. But hey, he's had a great season, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I am. I suppose is that they are punching above their weight. Therefore, I would give Behrman. I think I'd give him an A. I think he's been on form for a couple of years now, and maybe the half of last season he was on form more than the beginning. But I this year the team has dropped off, so that's kind of like not necessarily his fault. I'd give him a solid A though. That sounds biased because he's probably one of the Brits, and people listening might think because he's that, and we haven't given many A's out. But as you said, I do think that he is, when points are there to be had, he has got them. And to be on 18, if your teammate's on 3 and you're on 18, then you're doing all right in equal machinery. So I'd give Behrman an A, and I'd give Ocon. The fact that Behrman's an A, I'd give him a D. I don't think he's having a terrible season.
That's exactly how I scored them. That's exactly how I scored them. I actually thought for a moment, I think Behrman's an A star is a flawless season, right? And Behrman's had a couple of moments where he's been out qualified by Ocon, where he's made a little mistake, and he's been quite upset with himself that he's made that mistake. Not like a huge mistake, but a little mistake. And he's kind of copped to that and been quite self-critical. And I think that so there have been some little flaws, maybe him wanting it a bit too much in certain moments. So for me, yeah, it's been close to flawless, but not quite flawless. But it's been a really standout year, I think, for Ollie Behrman. He's done himself no harm whatsoever in terms of his reputation. And yeah, Ocon, I'd give him. At best, I'd give him a C minus. But if we're saying that, look, C is a pass, I think Ocon's got to be doing more. You know, yes, his teammates having a stellar season, but he's got to be doing more. He's got to be closer. So.
He's got to be taking some points off his teammate there to get a pass. And if Behrman was ahead of the two teams that are above Haas, if he was above any one of those four drivers, I would then maybe give him an A plus because he's then outperforming. I think an A plus is when you're outperforming what the car.
For sure. And actually, I mean, maybe we should be a little bit harsher on Ocon because, like I said, he in the standings, he is actually, you know, he's behind two Williamses
and an Audi.
You know, so kind of on that alone, I mean, 3 points it's not a lot. You know, he's had a lot of races.
I mean, in theory, he's behind 3 drivers that he shouldn't be behind.
Yes. And so, you know, Bortoletto in an Audi has got more than 3 times his points. Now again, like
we're downgrading him to an E.
All right, yeah, let's be a bit harsher on him. Poor Ocon, but I'd give him an
E. E for Esteban.
E for Esteban. I mean, eras. Then I mean, again, Behrman's a bit too new. I think the modern era could be his era. You've got to give him a bit more time, but that's certainly his era so far. Probably end of conversation on that one. Very similar to.
Plus, he cried his eyes out driving one of the, was it a V10 or
V8?
Which
I mean, look, that would be most drivers' choice, right?
Had me around about that last time, didn't I? So we'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there. You know, but for Ocon, I mean, Ocon's a tricky one. When was Ocon's peak season? Has he ever had a peak season? You know, really hard.
What was he in? It's probably the ground effect era that he got a few podiums and a win, didn't he? You know, but a lot of that, you know, like the rain in Brazil, for instance, or was it rain somewhere that, you know, and so that, you know, could be more fortunate than actually just being great in that era. He's one of those where I don't think that each era has massively affected him, like in the sense that he hasn't been amazing in an era, but hasn't been shockingly terrible and dropped off. He's probably been fairly average in most eras. And again, he's a difficult one to grade because he's never been, the limelight isn't on him, seeing him do that. So, and also never really been in a top team when they've been at the top of their game. You know, he's obviously Alpine, who have won championships in the past, but when he was there, they were in a bad, awful time. So, yeah, I think that he's a bit of a difficult one to rate. I'd say that he's just generally averaging out through all the eras. He's been similar in most of them. He hasn't stood out in any one of them for me. Therefore, he's a bit of an all-rounder.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, look, he got his only win.
Clearly, this one isn't his. If you're comparing him to his teammate in the first half of this season, clearly he is not having a nice time with the modern era. So, yeah, he's probably not loving that one. So
yeah, agreed. You know, if you were going to give him any one individual year, the year that he got his win, which was 2021.
Was it Russia?
No, it was Hungary, and it was the year when Alonso basically was it? I can't remember. Was it Alonso basically gave him the win? Is that right?
Did he give him the win? Did he?
Well, I mean, when I say gave him the win, like he literally held off everybody, and like, you know, that gave Ocon enough time to you know, have enough of a lead, and Vettel couldn't catch him by the end. So my memory of that race is it rained. There was a collision at the first corner. He was second after that. Then Lewis Hamilton, who was winning, basically pitted a lap later than everybody else. And so he like dropped down the field massively. But then he was coming back through. Alonso was in, I want to say, third or something like that. Vettel was flying through, but then got to Alonso. Alonso held off Vettel for ages, and then Vettel eventually got past, but couldn't catch Ocon. And Hamilton never got past Alonso, if I remember it correctly. So it literally finished.
Oh yes, I do remember that.
That was the race, and
yeah.
so you know, Ocon certainly drove very well in that race. You know, one race does not a season make, and I don't think it makes an era certainly. But if you were going to argue any period, maybe that was when he was driving his best. Maybe 2021.
Yeah. Probably don't care too much about Ocon, though, do we?
Anyway, all right. Well,
so
Alpine.
Based on last season, you have to say they've definitely come out the gate swinging a bit. They've obviously got the Mercedes engine now, which helps them out.
Had themselves a podium, somewhat controversially, in Monaco.
Yeah. Obviously, it was very doom and gloom there the last couple of years. As I've said, like their team principal, said that on a few podcasts ago. I will go with it's vastly improvement over the last 2 years, but I think they have been massively helped by the Mercedes engine. Therefore, I will give them, as the team, a solid C.
Interesting. I mean, the Mercedes gets all the credit for their uptick in form, right? But, you know, they've obviously integrated that engine very well into their car. I think they've taken Frank.
If they were above Racing Bulls, this is how I can break it down nice and quick. If they were above Racing Bulls, I'd give them a B. And if they were above one of the top four, I'd give them an A.
No, I see. For me, if they were above one of the top four, I'd give them an A star. And I think if they were above Racing Bulls, I'd give them an A. So that's why I would give them a B.
Because they're probably doing the best they could. Okay.
Yeah, I give them a B. I think they've done better than a C. I think a C is, you know, I was kind of expecting them to finish where they are, but I thought it would be a good job. And actually, the fact that they've been kind of seesawing with the Racing Bulls, who themselves have exceeded, a little spoiler to when we go on to them, but they certainly have also exceeded expectations. So I think for me, they've also got, you know, they have got a podium, which is pretty cool for them. Slightly controversial, but still can't take it away from them now. Maybe they can. Who knows? But yeah, for me, it's a B for me.
Okay, all right. I will go with you. I will retract and I will give them the B. Gasly and Colapinto. Colapinto's sort of come back the last few races and got himself sort of closest to his teammate and what his teammate is doing, he is now doing along with him. Maybe Gasly's dropped off a bit.
Sure, and it's worth saying Gasly's got a big points gap, but finishing third in Monaco did somewhat catapult him up and boost that up. So he still would be ahead of Colapinto even without that, but it wouldn't. I mean,
technically, yeah, he's got over double the points of Colapinto, but I don't see him being. I think that's close. I think it's closer than that.
Yeah, agreed.
But maybe
certainly felt closer than
that. Maybe his experience is helping him out there.
Sure.
So I'd probably go with. We've given them both a B. I'd give Colapinto. I think that he, as the second driver in that team, I think he's passed. So I think a C.
Agreed.
And I think that the reason that probably Alpine are a B is because Gasly is leading the team. So therefore, I'd give then Gasly a B.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I think Franco has actually. I was kind of expecting him to have a bit of a DE season because he came in, he started doing really well when he first came in to Formula One, kind of surprised everybody. Then he had a real kind of drop off. But look, I wondered whether he'd stay the course this season, and I think he's actually done a pretty damn good job. And so a C, I think, is very fair. And then, like you say, the team have got a B. So one of them's got to be at a B level at least, and I think Pierre Gasly's probably a B plus. So yeah, but certainly a solid B.
Yeah, okay. And then as we're probably learning a little bit now with the years where it's got a bit tricky, is Colapinto came in a bit in Williams and then came into Alpine last year, replacing Duhan. So I think he's a difficult one to really rate. This year will be his first full season in F1, I think, won't it? So if he makes it to the end. So I think wait to see really how he goes with those.
It definitely is a wait and see because, like you say, middle of 2024 season, he comes in, basically nails it, was brilliant for half a season.
Williams were good though, weren't
and
they?
then Williams were coming good at that point. Then in the Alpine last year was dreadful, and then this year has been somewhat in the middle. So call it. I think we'll call him a wait and see. Gasly, on the other hand, that's.
Gasly,
talk to me about that one because Gasly is I think a really tricky one to pin down. I think he's had some fantastic seasons at different and some difficult seasons at different parts of his career, and I think for that reason, it's almost like each era he's had some difficult times and some great times.
I'd probably say he's been consistent, this year. But I'd say that he was, and it's obviously most of his career was in the ground effect era. But I'd say he was one of the most consistent drivers in that era. So I just be very simple for me. I just say that clearly the ground effect era suited him well because although he. Well, he wasn't up against Max in the ground force era, was he? That was the hybrid era. But when he went back to Racing Bulls, T-Carb, whatever they were called, back in that era, AlphaTauri, he was behind probably probably in the top 5 most consistent drivers at that time. So I'd say ground effect era.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that 2020 year, which was the season, so he went back to AlphaTauri in 19, and I think re-established himself straight away as like, actually, wow, this guy's a bloody good.
Pretty much did awesome.
A bloody good driver. But then that 2020 year, he was really stand out. I think that was his absolute best year. He got his win in Monza, which was an unbelievable race, and he drove exceptionally well and held off a really fast finishing Carlos Sainz, who I think had a faster car that day. So that for me was peak Gasly. But I also think we are seeing bits of peak Gasly now. But let's go ground effect era for certainly, and we'll wait and see what happens with the rest of this era. But I think he's doing very well at the moment.
I mean, no spoilers, but there's probably only one driver we're really going to be putting into this era.
For sure, nailed on, guaranteed this is definitely his era. I wonder who that might be.
Having a lovely time.
I wonder who that might be. Okay, cool. Well, let's start moving up the grid towards that individual.
So top four then. So Red Bull.
Well, no, top 5. Racing Bulls.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Joe, what? I'd had Gasly in my head so much that I literally thought we were talking about
RB, AlphaTauri, Racing Bulls.
Sorry. The top 5, but the sort of the best of the rest. Racing Bulls.
What a season that team is having.
I mean, straight in, haven't really got to say too much. It's very obvious the fact that they are sitting 5th. I think when any team is is fifth. Everyone knows that's the best of the rest. You're outside the big dogs. If you're leading that, you're probably having a very good year. I mean, the teams that should be sat there, you could argue, are probably a team like an Alpine or an Aston Martin, or based on last year and maybe half of the year before, probably Williams.
Right.
So the fact that there are 100% free teams where it's wealth, money, personnel, driver lineup, I think that they are punching 3, if not 4 places above where they should be.
And
They're helped by the fact they technically have the best engine based on FIA ruling with the Ford engine. So that is clearly probably helping them out. But they're still ahead of Mercedes engine. They're still ahead of a Ferrari engine, 2 Mercedes engines, sorry, a Ferrari engine, and although a lot of people have left Honda, a historically good engine in Honda. So well, they put it this way, they couldn't be doing any better, could they? So it's got to be an A star.
yeah, I totally agree. And I said it earlier that I thought actually at the start of this season, and look, I thought Arvid Liblad was going to be a fantastic success, but he was a complete unknown. So you've got a complete rookie in Arvid Lindblad, and then you've got Liam Lawson, who, to be honest with you, I felt he'd had his time and was quite lucky to still be in Formula One. And so that lineup was weak, I would describe it as pretty weak. And so for them both,
feisty though, isn't it? Feisty though.
But for them,
two characters who are very, very confident boys.
Yeah.
Like they 100% back themselves. So
yes,
maybe we actually probably underestimate. I mean, we didn't know nothing about Lindblad, but Lawson, it's going to be a hit for anyone, right? Losing your seat after 2 races, whatever it was at Red Bull.
for sure.
So he's got a bit of a point to prove. He was very, very confident prior to going to Red Bull. Naturally, your confidence is going to be a bit low because you're getting whipped, and you sort of have to sort of swallow your pride a bit. I think actually, when you sort of think about it, we probably shouldn't be as surprised perhaps as what we are, because they're both very, very confident. Kind of got nothing to lose, and they've got a decent car. The car is every week talked about as just a very, very sensible, good car. And if anyone was driving it, everyone wants to see Max in it, because if Max was in it, they reckon they might be winning the world championship. I don't know about that. But it's just
it's clearly a very drivable car compared to all the other cars out there. It clearly is a very drivable car, and they're driving it very well.
And the 2 boys getting their elbows out. I'm enjoying. Let me think about this before I say it out loud. Probably the best driver lineup battle potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're a fantastic
going on.
And actually, I said the same thing about Behrman, but Lindblad has made a few mistakes, few rookie errors that he's been quite unhappy about, quite vocal about, that where he's let Lawson out-qualify him. I think they've had a really fantastic battle. I think Lindblad is a faster and a better driver than Lawson, but Lawson's kind of showing his experience a bit more and his calm head a little bit more than Lindblad is. So, yeah, I think it's been a fantastic battle between the pair of them. I think Lindblad's a little bit unlucky to be 20 points behind his teammate. But yeah, the team, the car, the performance, all of it, it's a straight up A star. And interestingly, I think for me personally, I've got the team down as an A star, but I put both the drivers down as A's, which maybe doesn't quite add up. But
do you know what? I'll give, for a rookie year, Lindblad is doing awesome. I would say if he was beating his teammate, I'd give him an A. If he was as many points ahead as Lawson is of him, I'd give him an A star. So, and I'm a big Lindblad fan, but I'm going to give him a B.
Okay.
And only because I want Lawson to stand out in my grade. If I give him an A, I'm not going to give Lawson an A star. So then I'd have to give them both an A. So, but I do think Lawson, because of what happened at Red Bull and because he's kind of really got the sort of trying to prove himself this year, I want to give him the A, and therefore I then have to give Lindblad a B.
You know, I think that's fair. And actually, I think that the drivers don't have to add up to the team. The team have given them an unbelievable car and an unbelievable platform. And I think both of them have performed very well, hence the B and the A. I don't think either of them have really been flawless and therefore been an A star. I think Lawson has shown that Lindblad is quicker than him when he can be, but Lindblad's also shown some sort of rookie mistakes, which can happen, which will happen.
Had a bit of a blip, and as I say, like if he was beating his teammate, there'd be no doubt that he'd be on an A. Rookie season, beating your teammate, it doesn't matter who your teammate is. If it's your first year in F1 and you beat your teammate, I'm going to be giving you bonus points for that, so I'd give him an A. And if he was beating him by a nice margin, I'd boost it up again. So.
Okay, I'll accept that. An A and a B.
Do I think that Lindblad could still finish above his teammate? I think he'd give it a good go.
I think he certainly could finish close. I think if he just tidies up those few little mistakes that creep in where he's just trying a bit too hard. And you know, you and I have said it all year long with the grid rivals, with the situation with the turbo driver in grid rivals, that he's the only driver that you can have in there. He's the only one who makes any sense. And that's quite rare. In all the years we've been doing grid rivals, I don't think it's ever been this obvious for this long. Normally their value jumps up quick enough that they stop being able to have the turbo driver. But he's been so undervalued for so long and just gaining 2 million like basically every race. But he's still not at the turbo driver like threshold where you're not allowed them anymore. So
18 mil,
yeah. He is having a brilliant season. I think if he carries on, sorts a few of those little things out, I think he'll push Liam Lawson close. But well done Lawson for, like you say, pulling it back and certainly proving me a little bit wrong. He's a better driver than I thought that maybe he was.
Yeah, definitely. Eras again. Lawson was kind of swapped, wasn't he, into the Red Bull, and he was in the AlphaTauri in the last era. I'd argue that he's having a great time this year. So he's enjoying the new era, I would say. And Lindblad, obviously, we've got nothing to compare him to. So
sure. I think they're both wait and seers.
Yeah. And then we go on to Red Bull.
Yes, we're now into the top four.
Yeah. So top four, Red Bull.
So a bit of news here before you dive into it too far. So old Isaac Hadjar will not be racing in Zandvoort. He's hurt his wrist on his holidays. It was very unclear what he's actually done. I didn't dive into it, but he's hurt his wrist somehow. So maybe he's fallen off a bike or something. I don't know, but I'm sure there are places out there where you can find out exactly what he did. Didn't say it on the BBC story that I read about it, but yeah, so he won't be in Zandvoort, which is a shame for Isaac. But there you go. That gives somebody else a chance. Who does it give a chance to, actually? It's a good question.
I mean, have they got it on the news of who might be replacing him? So
Lawson's going to replace him, and Sonoda's going to Racing Bulls. So there we go. Sonoda's back in. Let's see what happens with Lawson. You know, he only got 2 races last time. Sounds like he's only going to get 1 this time. And I hope it just doesn't go horribly for him. That would really set him back again, wouldn't it?
I do still find that weird, though, because this is where everyone's a little bit shady with the whole second team thing is, how can you bring a driver from another team up to your team? It should be that you have to use your reserve driver that you've classified as that year. So
true, but then when Russell subbed in Sakir,
same thing though. I'd argue the same thing.
But that would be.
I'm not saying that
seeing Russell in that Mercedes was brilliant.
Loved it. But do you see?
Oh, he's hurt his wrist while boxing.
Do you see how that's quite wrong? That you're able to
he was boxing,
represent two teams.
Why did he go boxing? What a silly thing to do.
Silly thing.
I mean, they're not allowed to jump out of planes and things like that, are they? Formula One drivers, written into their contract, they can't do dangerous things.
That's Hadjar's injury then. So the team, Red Bull, they're the worst of the big four. So, that doesn't sound great when you say it that way. However, they had a new engine.
Yeah.
Supplier.
Sort of,
yeah. I mean, it's a new, from last season, they've gone from Honda to then their Red Bull Ford.
Sure, but it was always like sort of Red Bull powertrains, wasn't it? Have sort of always kind of been there the last few seasons, but now this is the first time them doing it properly. But now it's Ford badged. But yeah, it's a little bit weird, but it's
yeah. I suppose. Yeah, a lot of the people that worked for Honda stayed with Red Bull, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah,
I think so. The reason Aston doing great is because Red Bull have got all your people, mate. But so yeah, kind of like old but not, but new but not, but new driver lineup as well. So Hadjar, well, a continuation. Obviously, Hadjar replaced Lawson. Tsunoda replaced Lawson last year.
Yes. So it is a new lineup because Hadjar's... It's a new lineup because Hadjar's obviously in, and alongside Max, but that's the first time
I was literally questioning myself there because
you know what? It's so with the merry-go-round, it's so easy to forget like who's what and where.
But also Red Bull swapped their drivers like 2 races into a season, right? So you're trying to think, did Hadjar come in at the end of last season or did he start new this season? But no, definitely started new. So new driver lineup this year. So taking all of those into account, although Horner also left last year at some point, didn't he?
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yep. This is the first full season with a new team principal as well.
Laurent Mekies.
They've also lost the hardened Austrian, that is, I've lost his name in my mind.
Dietrich Mateschitz?
No.
Or we're talking Helmut Marko more recently.
Marko. Is he Austrian?
Yes. Maybe. German? Austrian? Can't remember.
Yeah,
one of those.
We're starting to sound barely qualified. I mean, it was always going to happen. It was going to happen at one stage. We've got too statty, and now we're flawed. We've come across a couple of flaws. But ultimately, the point I'm making, been a lot of change.
Yeah, a lot of change. But I don't think if you think about where they are,
season, they've lost GP.
Yes,
true. So I'm looking. Again, I'm trying to look at this very fairly. McLaren, double world champions in team-wise. Double constructors champions.
Double constructors, yeah.
Followed by their first driver championship for a while last year. So been probably arguably the best team for the last
couple years,
year and a half, 2 years. Ferrari have definitely made a step forward. Mercedes have also made a jump forward, but this was maybe always going to suit them. These regulations were always going to suit them based around what we know from the past when we had a last big engine revamp. So I think Red Bull are probably underperforming, I think, by possibly a place. Therefore,
I'd agree, but I'd also say, even though it's only a place, I mean, if they were outside of the top four, I think you'd be in E/F territory, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And they do have a sizable gap to fifth, like enormous, more than 100 points. So, they're comfortably fourth, but they're also, you know, they're also more than double the points behind, less than half the points of what Mercedes have got. So
It's a funny one because they've been competitive, very competitive at some races. They've been told they've got the best engine package.
well, certainly the best ICE.
Yeah, so then you're arguing, well, then are they the rest of the car is then letting them down? Therefore, we should mark them down for that because they should, if they were doing better with the aero, doing better with all other sectors areas, then that car potentially could be a championship
Yeah.
leading car. So I think we definitely got to mark them down. I think as it stands in the current regulations, I think that they're in the top four, therefore they're passing with a C.
See, for me, I think I think by their own admission they'd be very disappointed with being fourth, and uh, they've had the odd moment of looking like they could maybe win a race, but they haven't won a race, and I think they'd be very disappointed by that. And I think not even winning a race or really being massively close to winning a race, yeah, to me is quite disappointing for them, and so I'd give them a D. I think they'd be pretty disappointed. I think on their own objectives, I'd say that they'd failed so far this season.
Yeah, yeah, okay. If they're failing, well, I suppose it depends on the other teams, doesn't it? I suppose it depends on the other teams, what we rank them at to be where we're at. I've probably been very fair there. Not that you've not been fair. Maybe I've been sorry. Maybe I've been generous. Um, if they were marking themselves, if it was Max, he'd probably say they're a D, wouldn't he?
Yeah, yeah, I think you would.
He wouldn't say they're passing.
No,
So yeah, okay. No, you've convinced me. I mean, this is a very collaborative podcast, I find. Anyway, we didn't set any rules at the beginning. No, I'd go with their
a D
their
plus.
if they close that gap on McLaren and they win one of the first two races back, I think they're on the right track to passing, and they would move into a C.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that.
So drivers then, Max and Hajar.
Oh, it's an interesting
Go.
one because in the same way as the team for Racing Bulls outperformed the drivers, I think the drivers have been outperforming the Red Bull. I think Isaac Hadjar's done a pretty good job in what is a pretty poisony, chalicey type of type of seat. I think he's done pretty okay. I wouldn't say he's done amazingly, but he's been there or thereabouts, which is more than can be said for some of his more recent, comparables. So yeah, I think he's done a pretty good job, and I think Max is Max. I think he's still clearly the best current driver on the grid, and he's a phenomenon, and I think he's once again outperforming his car. But he hasn't been at the stellar heights that he has been, and there's no doubt he doesn't like these cars. And there's no doubt, I think at the beginning of the season, he was really taking a bit of time to get used to the way that you have to drive these cars to be quick. And I would almost sort of say because he doesn't want to drive that way, maybe he had to kind of get over some of his stubbornness. Like, no, I don't want to drive the car like that. I want to be fast in the corners. I want to be driving like I used to. And that was kind of costing him. And I think eventually kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to have to play the game here. Otherwise, I'm going to have a shit season. So I think Max has done pretty okay and at moments very well. And I think Adjar has done pretty stellar too. I think they both get passes. What those passes look like can be I think, up for debate.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think Hajar. I don't think he can be, considering what that seat is as well. I don't think that you can, you give the guy anything but a good solid pass. Like, I think that you can almost rank him differently to how you would. Well, you obviously would rank him differently to how you would rank Max. You've got 4-time world champion. You've got Guy that was rookie, now gone up to the top seat. So I think that you can't expect. I think that Hadjar had a bit of a dip, didn't he? And then he's then been delivering.
He did. And if you just look purely at the stats, I mean, he's basically out-qualified in every single race and out-raced in every single race. So on that alone, you're going, well, he's had a terrible season. But like you say, I think you have to judge it differently. And the fact that he's up against Max, for me, it's as solid a C as it could possibly come.
Yeah, I think I would go. I think I'd go a B for Hadjar.
Okay.
I think I go a B. I think that he, for instance, Max. What did you say to Max? Sorry.
Well, I think Max, by his own admission, probably hasn't had the best season. So I don't think you can give him anything really higher than a B.
Yeah,
I think he's still the best driver on the grid, but I don't think necessarily that his former is driving actually as a sign that, because he's not on it or whatever, in terms of he couldn't. I feel like he could get an A star if he really wanted to, and actually he knows that like the car isn't quite there, so I think he's quite happy to drive less quickly to make a point. And yeah, like it's almost like he can turn it on whenever he really wants, and like,
it's a funny one.
The motivation isn't there, so he's like, well, what's the point in me really turning it on? You got to give me a better car.
Which you could really mark him down for, right?
You could.
I mean, I just think Max wants to win every second of every day.
Yeah.
So and then you then wonder, has he made a couple of mistakes, the spins and things? I mean, again, this is the problem: is because it's Max, it's definitely not him. Yeah. It's the car. Yeah. So you get that reputation by winning yourself, right? Like for instance, I think I remember like Rosberg saying something about like when Hamilton had his spin last year at Spa, he's like, "Oh, I've never seen Hamilton do that, so therefore he would never do it." It's like, well, you might not have never seen him do it, but did he make a mistake? I mean, like, you never, I've never dropped the TV on the floor until I have, and then I've made a mistake, have I? You know what I mean? So like, this is that fine line between racing drivers are never, it's never their fault, or the crash is never their fault. It was the car, a gust of wind, or this or that, the other. Could Max have been pushing it a little bit too much in some of these spins? Therefore, they technically are mistakes, or miscalculations or whatever.
Well, certainly the latter.
It could be a combination.
Certainly the latter ones have not been his fault, because that's the rear wing not closing, right? Yeah. But the one in Austria, for example, Q3 spins off, puts it in the barrier. That seemed
pushing it too much.
Yeah, that seemed to be him.
But you're going to push more. This was the whole Charles Leclerc debate, was that it was like, it makes too many mistakes. And he's like, yeah, but if he had the best car, maybe he wouldn't push it as much as he did. Therefore, he's pushing it as much as he did. Therefore, he then makes more mistakes. That's what then gives him the reputation. Max was always known as a bit kamikaze before he was winning world championships. But, lo and behold, you give him the best car, the bloke doesn't make one mistake, So, it's a fine line. If you're going on it, you can't judge Max on his standards in the past years, because Red Bull have been the dominating car. So you can only really judge him on, is he getting more out of that Red Bull than what? Is he getting more out of that Red Bull than what it should? Probably yes, in some races. So I would say that I would give Max a B. What would I need to give him an A? I think that if he, it's close for an A for me, because
it is. I think again, by Max's own admission, half a season, no wins. He's
I
not giving
think I
himself
think
an
I
A,
I
is he?
think if he had a win, it would be an A because that would be a clear and obvious like, look what I've done. I've literally won a race with this car, and I shouldn't have. So I go B. He's a race win away from being an A and being bang on it, and then it's then very much more the Red Bull's fault than his. Well, it is anyway more Red Bull's fault. It already is more Red Bull's fault than his. Hence why we've given them a. What did I give them? I gave them a. We settled on a D, didn't we? So I would say that Hajar, you can't fault him. He's doing a good job in that car for the first year, B. And I'd give Max, I think he's outperforming that car, so I'm giving him a B. And it's the team that is very much letting that team down. Therefore, they're failing the drivers, so they're getting a D. Eras, I think that Max hates this era. I don't know what makes me think that, but he definitely does.
You know, he's been quite subtle about it. I mean, certainly his peak era was, you know, those years and the year where he basically won every single race. You know, which was phenomenal. The ground effect years, but I don't even think they were his favorite. I think he would say that he was, you know, peak probably 2021, which was end of the hybrid era before going into the ground effect, right? Like,
do you reckon?
I think that's what he'd probably say.
Because the thing with the ground effect is that it was just the most dominating year by a single driver. It was insane. So I just think,
and it was a really high grip, but also like grip could suddenly disappear type, and he would, like you say, he was flawless that year. He won it at a canter.
But tell me a season though. So he won 3 world championships in the ground effect era.
Yeah,
and he chased down 2 McLarens and nearly won it.
Yes,
in a fourth.
You know what? Yeah, nothing else matters. End of conversation. End of conversation. That's
would have been the biggest comeback. Would have been the biggest comeback by any world champion, right? Like, 140 something points behind, clearly the best car.
Yeah,
and you punted down not 1 but 2 drivers. Clearly, you are the best driver in that era. Therefore, it has to be his era. And yeah, wasn't too shabby in the hybrid era, and he pushed the Mercedes boys in many races before Red Bull even had a championship winning car. So clearly enjoyed that era as well, and proved by winning the last season of that era that 4 seasons of the ground effect car, wins 3 world championships, and then hunts down to nearly win it 4 years in that era 4 years in a row, and therefore it would have had a 5th. So yeah, I'd say, and then Hajar is, again, he's just one of those newbies, isn't he? Where I think he's enjoying this era. Half a season in, again, seems to be a bit of a theme with the youngsters, but he's close to Max, and that's probably because Max very much doesn't like this. He is liking this, which brings them closer together. If Max gets a hold of that, and as we said earlier in the podcast, unlearns some things from previous eras and learns more about this one, I can't see that gap would just get bigger again, because he's just the more talented driver. So yeah, I think that as it stands, Hajar is enjoying, like a few of the youngsters are, this era. And I can't work out yet if that's because they're particularly good at it, or if it's because the rest have been in too many different cars that they are needing to unlearn things to find that same comfortability. Comfortability? Is that a word?
Comfortability.
Well, I mean, I gave it a good shot the first time, but I'm not able
You're getting
to
worse and
repeat
worse.
that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
So on to then McLaren. This is an interesting one. Okay, so McLaren,
current world champions, drivers and constructors, of course. So you've got to straight away off the bat.
Race winner, most recent race winner.
But you've got straight off the bat, you've got to say they're 3rd in the championship. and quite a distant third. They are a long way behind second and a huge way behind first. So you've got to say that in and of itself is disappointing. But look, it's a new era. They're up again. They've obviously got the same engine, but it's a new engine that they obviously haven't.
They wouldn't have been focusing too much on, because they had to win the World Championship last year. They would have been putting more effort into that season.
Sure. Plus, we've always seen this, like a manufacturer. They make the engine, they make the car to fit the engine. They know what route they're going down. McLaren wouldn't have known that until a certain point when Mercedes drop an engine and go, "There you go, there's your engine." So I think it can be forgiven. I think they're developing really well as well. So I think overall, I think on the bare face of it, they've not had a great season because they're a long way off the championship that they're trying to reclaim, to win it for a third year in a row. But I have been quite impressed at the way that they've actually kind of stayed there or thereabouts, and the fact that they have developed and that they've got a recent history of that, of developing really well through the season.
Definitely, yeah.
And they seem to be repeating that. It's only one race, but it was a really great race from them. So, yeah, I think there's some positive signs. I think for me, again, they're in third in the championship. I think realistically at the start of the season, nobody thought anything better than them. So I think they've passed. I think that as the reigning champions, they'll be disappointed not to be closer to the number one spot. So for me, I'd give it a solid B as a team.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say that they're probably...
I think they probably were a C. I think they probably were a C, but now that they've dominated a weekend...
Yeah. I think that I think some people will have them as 2 places down, therefore they're a C. Some people will have them as 2 places down, but let's be fair... Mercedes supply their engine, and they might maybe could make an argument they should be ahead of Ferrari based on recent years. Therefore, if they were in second, they would have a B. If they were in first, A. If they were winning by a country mile, A star. So I would go somewhere between a B and a C, maybe a B minus, because I think that agree with everything you said, but Ferrari have outgunned them, and also Mercedes have come from behind and leapfrogged a couple of teams to be leading by a margin.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I'd be quite happy. I think a B is generous, so I think a C probably is understandable.
I'm setting them high standards because they are double world champions.
Sure.
I think if Mercedes were in this position, I think we'd say C, and I think we need to judge McLaren now by that same standard. Okay, not as many years of dominance, but they have been the best team. They've recruited so many good people. They've got a great driver lineup, good CEO, good team boss, great strategy team.
And their upgrades work, which is, not a given.
Money pouring in, great upgrade system. So I was expecting upgrades to come probably by their standards a little bit quicker, but they've come in now and they're up there, and all teams are upgrading. So that's also difficult because Ferrari are also chucking upgrades on, Red Bull chucking upgrades on. They're all taking points off each other. But I would say that they are a C, and they are very close to becoming a B, because they could become even...
If these upgrades stick and we now see them have opportunities to win races, we're not necessarily expecting them to dominate weekends quite in the way they did in the last race, but if they're there in the conversation for qualifying and for race wins, then I think that then puts them in a solid B. But you're right, until they do that consistently, race
they're
really
literally
enough.
Probably they're 1 or 2 weekends away from showing that they are now clearly the second best car team, and therefore you then have to say, well, then they're a B, even though they will still be some points maybe behind Ferrari. they would have the momentum would have shifted, and they would then be a B for me. So they're very close to becoming the B. Depends how Ferrari react after the summer break,
Sure.
because they could then be pushed back down, and they will remain a C. And Ferrari, who we'll move on to next, but before the eras for Piastri and the rankings for Norris and Piastri. So Norris has just won a race, so and I feel like a lot of pressure's on him because he's current world champion. So again, trying to take everything into account, he could have easily been off it this year. Again, I'm sure that if all the stats are up there, I think we've had this chat as well, that I kind of feel like he's just been fairly comfortable competing with Oscar this year. It doesn't
seem
seem
to have Oscar's number pretty much every weekend.
and I sort of said that, and then I think there was like a bit of a stat that there was some races and some qualifiers that actually it was a bit maybe closer than what maybe I was making it out to be, but I'd love to then get into like, well, how many DNFs did Norris have, or did he have a failure there, or was his qualifying interrupted there, and that's why he qualified behind there. The general feel from watching it every weekend is that you probably put your money on Norris in most races this year, and that tells a story in its own. So I think that Norris is probably a solid. I would say that he is. Do you know what? I'm going to say he's exactly the same as McLaren. Slow start. Obviously, the car played a part. I think he's a C. No. His win, I think, puts him on a B. I think his win puts him on a B.
I think I'm a little bit conscious of my own bias here because I'm British and I do love Lando. So my heart is saying B, but I think my head is saying it's the same as McLaren. He's still just about a C, and let's see what happens in the second part of the season. I think he's done a really good job. I think the car has been so far away from the chasing pack that he's never worried about that, and it's been so far away from Ferrari and Mercedes that he's never going to trouble them. So he's kind of been in a no man's land. So it's not really his fault that he's not had like huge opportunities to shine, but he's also not had huge opportunities to shine. So for me, it's a C, and he's taken a few little moments that he's had. He's got his race win. Well done, Lando. I think if he keeps that momentum up, I think he pushes himself up our rankings by the end of the season. I'm fairly confident he'll finish higher than a C, and hopefully maybe even a couple of letters higher than a C. But I think trying to remove some of my bias, I think he probably is a C. Especially as what I'm going to say next is that I think Oscar's been disappointing, and I think on that alone, I think he can't pass. And I think it's harsh to give him a D, but I think he can't pass. So I'm going to give him a D plus and say that he's not been miles off, but it's not quite.
A D wouldn't, would it? I mean, F would be an absolute fail, and an E would be sort of
pretty
miles
bad
off, and then a D would just be not on it, not passable. Like if he had had a weekend like Lando, we'd be giving him a C.
Sure.
But he hasn't. I can't think of a time this year where I've gone like we've had it with Hamilton. We've had it with even with Russell and as bad of a time that he's been having of it. We've had it with Max, Hadjar, the other boys and all the other teams. They've had a weekend when you go, okay, Hadjar at Monaco, so I think it was Max at Suzuka.
Yeah, Oscar, you're right. He hasn't had a single moment where I've gone like, oh, he's done something there. That's really stand out.
Don't forget Oscar. We've not had that. It's just been like, oh, yeah. McLaren looked strong this weekend. Oh, Lando won it. Not much. So yeah, D. Yeah, the easy one, that one really. And so yeah, D. Room for improvement. Piastri.
And by that, I think obviously so far this hasn't been his era. That may not have anything to do with the car, but it's obviously too early to tell yet. I think obviously he's not been in Formula One that long, and most of his career has just been the end of the last era. So
ground
the
effect.
ground
It's
effect.
again
So
difficult one again, isn't it?
difficult one.
He's not. You probably would put him in the equation of drivers struggling with this era of car. I mean, we've put Max in that bracket, so it's not like you can't be too good not to be in that bracket. Like it can just be, it just doesn't suit you as well. You could still give it a bloody good go, but it doesn't suit you. So I don't think it seems to have suited
Yeah,
Oscar very much.
agreed. And actually, ironically, obviously Lando won his championship. Um, but I don't, we've talked about this endlessly before that he didn't blow anybody's socks off by winning that championship throughout the course of the season. He had moments and hints at it, but it wasn't an absolutely incredible world championship from him.
Yeah,
The
domination.
year
Yeah,
the year before, arguably he should have won the world championship, but somewhat underperformed and didn't win it. And I actually think even though we've given him a C, there's so much potential there. There's so much talent there, and I feel like like I said, he hasn't had the opportunity to shine. That's why he's only got a C. I think if he was driving a Mercedes this year, I think he'd be doing a lot better than George Russell is, for example. And
yeah,
I do think that I have seen some signs that these cars suit him and that he quite enjoys driving them. So I think it's a difficult one. I think given the fact that when his title is and all that, yeah, okay, ground effect era so far has he clearly been his best. But I
he was very
think
consistent
in
as
a
well,
few
wasn't
seasons'
he?
time, we might be
In
saying
that,
that this modern era is his era. But yeah, I
yeah,
guess it's a bit
yeah,
of a wait and see
yeah,
on that one.
possibly. I mean, it could be a Max, like won his championship in the last year of an era, and then went into the other era and sort of shone. I think that he was very very consistent in the ground effect era. So he would have to win a world championship, maybe two, to convince me that this era would be his better one. But
Sure.
um, that's pretty self-explanatory, really. But yeah, okay, right. Ferrari boys, then. Ferrari first. So second, bit of a different Ferrari this year. Very very innovative, innovative, innovative with their
There's a word in there
sort of
somewhere, mate.
yeah with their package. Sort of thinking outside the box and being risk takers, being
Aggressive
aggressive with
strategically.
their strategy. A bit of Ferrari are looking a bit sexy now
They
again.
really are. And, I think that the Mercedes have clearly had overall a better car than them. But I think all of those factors together, not just the drivers, and obviously we'll get to the drivers, but I think the way that we've described them at times this season as being operationally excellent, which at the start of the season we said, what do they need more than anything on this planet? And we said they need some bloody operational excellence, right? Um, and so yeah, you've got to give them a lot of credit for that, a lot, and I think that will reflect in the score that we both seem like we're going to give them. I think you've got to give them an A, and they're
Yeah, yeah,
close to an A star. I've been, from where they were to where they are, the fact that they're competing against a Mercedes engine that everyone knew from pre-testing was just, in terms of not just the ICE. Obviously, we know the ICE from the Red Bull powertrains, Ford, whatever you want to call it, is supposedly the best. But the actual overall package, including the hybrid and all of that, is clearly Mercedes is phenomenal. So the fact that Ferrari
yeah,
is close enough to be competing with them, and has been really good in the corners, particularly the medium speed corners. They look great. They brought in the Macarena wing before anybody else. Yes, I know Red Bull were working on it, but they brought it out first. They've innovated. I just think there's so much to be positive about Ferrari there, and you just got to hope that, from a Ferrari fan point of view, that this isn't a bit of a flash in the pan, and that this kind of operational excellence is the new norm.
yeah. No, agree with that, all of that. They've come out of the blocks and they seem like they want it, and
They really seem like they want it.
hungry and quite sort of serious. Like they're sort of backing their name. They're sort of like and it's good to see. Like no one wants to see a Ferrari always sort of like flagging behind another team or two. Like you want
Sure,
to see
yeah.
them, like because it's just a massive name, isn't it? It's
And
like,
it was funny.
you
It
want
was
to see them
funny
back.
watching their strategy question. At the end at the end of their statements or whatever, and laughing at them about their strategy. It was funny for a bit, but I
You're
think all
generally starting to feel sorry, like
yeah,
it's
and I
almost
think
like
all Formula One fans. I've said before, I'm not a massive Ferrari fan myself, but eventually you want to see the greats be great, and they are obviously a great team. And I'm just, you've got to give them the A for the half season they've had, and you just got to pray that they keep it going.
oh yeah, if they win the championship, they're an A star, aren't
Oh,
they?
for
But if
sure,
they
100%, no doubt.
or even if one of their drivers wins it and they don't manage to win the constructors,
I mean,
if they win,
realistically, it would be if Lewis somehow wins the title, which obviously he is in second place, not by a lot, but he is in second place. If he was somehow won the title, not only would it be an A star for him, it'd be an A star for the team. Probably be more than an A star. You'd have to give him 2 stars.
yeah. So yeah, Ferrari easy A. Um, Drivers then. Well, before we leave Ferrari, then, do you think that because obviously we've just mentioned, we've sort of really picked up on since we've been talking about the top teams. The question hasn't really been asked is, do we think they could push on like out of those three? Then, as after Ferrari, it's only Mercedes left to talk about. Out of Ferrari, out of McLaren, out of Red Bull, who do you see who will push on to then be if anyone's going to try and hunt down the Mercedes?
Yeah, my
Who
my
do you think it will
my
be? Because they're all
worry.
going to take points off each other, isn't it? And that could then mean that the Mercedes get even further ahead.
And I think that will happen. To be honest with you, but I do think that for Ferrari, I would worry that I think McLaren have shown that they're capable of getting the jump on them. But we've had a big old long summer break, so I think it's a little case of wait and see what happens, in Zandvoort. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that Ferrari can continue to be that second team. I don't know. It's such a hard question to answer, but I think if they
Yeah,
do keep second place, then at the end of the season they'll be a ranked an A for sure.
I think it ultimately comes down to Antonelli needs to worry about one driver, two. Um, well, maybe as it stands, really sort of two his
One driver
teammate,
and his
but
teammate, isn't
but
it? Yeah.
but but Hamilton and his teammate. Whereas Hamilton has to worry about Antonelli, Russell, his teammate Leclerc, Norris,
Verstappen, Norris,
Verstappen,
yeah,
and then possibly
Hadjar to a certain extent.
Piastri, Hadjar to an extent. It's just quite a lot stacked against you. Like you can get carried away with these things, and there's everything you're seeing at the moment is like, oh, Hamilton, he's in the title race. It's like I feel
Is he?
like he's technically in the title race, but has to battle off 6 drivers,
Yeah.
and Antonelli doesn't have to do that. So it's really stacked against him if you're looking at it from that point of view. So I would love to see Ferrari bring some upgrades, make a big push, maybe have a bit of a gap between them and third and fourth, and then we get a 2-horse shootout. It's the one thing I've told you that we're sort of lacking. Some people, I think you were in the camp of loving it, loving the multiple race winners and no one there, and I feel like I can completely understand why people are loving that, but I'm also missing my rivalry. I'm missing my battle. I'm missing the chase, the hunt, the
Yeah.
pressure that brings with it.
And there's no reason.
Unfortunately,
There's no reason you can't have both. I mean, obviously we haven't had both because Antonelli's won just so many races that he's got that big gap. But you can have it where there's lots of drivers winning and the lead at the top of the championship is a handful of points. It's just sadly we've not really had that at all, right? Or Russell was leading at the beginning, and there was a bit of a battle between the two Mercedes, but Antonelli basically just got a big lead and made it massive, and then had a bit of bad luck, and it went down again, and now it's gone back up again. So it's not. You're right. We have missed that, and there is.
yeah. I
If
mean, what you want,
Ferrari are your best bet,
what you
but I
want
don't think
is
it'll happen.
you want a Leicester Premier League winning season where It could have been Leicester, it could have been Arsenal, it could have been Spurs. Very close to the end, and Leicester got over the line, and that was pressure, and that was, oh my God, this could be anyone's, rather than a Man City sort of running away with it.
Winning
But
it at a
then
canter.
everyone's chasing second, third, and fourth, which is great. And the top four race then becomes the most entertaining thing. It's kind of what we're getting into, maybe, is that we've got our Man City, Antonelli, and then we've got our who's going to be in the top four. And it's like, well, no one really cares about the top four in F1. Not like I do in football. They actually just care about the winner. So it's a bit tricky in terms of that. Went a little bit off piece there, but so we hope that Ferrari can probably push on and bring us that rivalry, and it would be great to see the old dog Hamilton try to hunt down the young pup. That could be quite cool.
Really cool.
So on to them then. So Hamilton and Leclerc's grades. I think that I'll start with Hamilton. It could sound biased, but I think it's fair. He's come back from an era that he clearly didn't enjoy, so might as well kill two birds with one stone. Definitely not his era, that one.
Yeah.
The ground effect cars. Love the hybrid era, and it seems to have found some love for this era as well. But he's had to deal with a lot of pressure, and he's getting older, not younger. I would say to be sitting second in the championship ahead of a Mercedes, you could argue that he could be an A star, So I would say he's beating his teammate, who's a young, phenomenal driver. He's beating his ex-teammate, who's in the best car, and he's 40-something years old. Yeah, I would say,
and he's not
definitely
miles
an A.
off. He's not. He's definitely an A. He's definitely an A at least, right? Absolutely. I think he's right on the cusp because he's not a million miles off Kimi. What is he? 50 points? Yeah, 50 points, which is 2 race wins. Okay, he's not close. He's not close, but he's also not a million miles away. And yeah, I a certain amount of that is because the Mercedes has had some reliability issues, and obviously that's kind of where the Ferrari hasn't. Otherwise, that gap would be a lot bigger, and he also wouldn't be in second. But I think, given everything you've said, that's all very true. I mean, he's absolutely an A. For me, he's not quite an A star. He's not had a flawless season, that's for sure. And no. It's been one hell of a resurgent, Phoenix-like year coming back from I'm the worst driver of all time that he was talking last year. And, he is well and truly back, which is brilliant. And the feel-good vibes alone are A star worthy. But in reality, he's...
You make a valid point with the reliability of the Mercedes. That kind of brings us down and back to earth a little bit. I think he. I mean, that's got nothing to do with him, right? But
it's also worth saying he's won one race, but I think he could have won more. And
I think
been a couple qualifyings there where he didn't quite put it together, and so for that reason, again, it can't quite be the A star that I think that it potentially could have been. And so for me, it's an A, and brilliant to see him back up there. Well done, Lewis.
Currently an A, yeah. And then Charles, then I think that he would be disappointed. I know that Hamilton's a 7-time world champion, but I think he would be disappointed being in that team as long as he's been in it to be behind his teammate. And I think that if Lewis is an A, then Charles can't be an A. So I would say that he's doing a good job. But this has probably been one of his seasons where it's probably been his worst season in quite a few years. And I would say those two together means I think he gets a pass at C, and he's close with his recent form of bumping himself up to a B. but he would have to surpass his teammate. Well, be in his teammate's position to be an A. So I would say C for Charles, pushing towards a B,
Yeah,
close to a B.
I think he was a D. I mean, he had those cumulative Q3 mistakes that really cost him, and he did look out of sorts. And Lewis just seemed to be the better driver, and I don't think Charles has ever really experienced that against a teammate in his time. So, you could argue him and Carlos Sainz had a good battle, but don't think Charles will ever have thought, I'm not Ferrari's number one boy here. And I think he possibly started to feel. I mean, he's still clearly their future and all of that, but
He's their
but
darling, isn't he?
he is their darling. But I do feel like he's not been the automatic, like he's their poster boy, because Lewis has just been doing so well. And so I think he was a D, and I think he found that little bit of form at the end of the first half, like you said, and he's had a bit of a resurgence. So for me, I think he's just scraped into a C, if I'm being honest. I think he's a bit off a B.
Okay.
I think he's a bit off a B, but actually his current trajectory is really positive. So look, if Ferrari can bring some stuff that keeps that car in a position where it can win races. I actually think the fact that he's won as many races as his teammates whilst having a disappointing season actually is quite a coup.
I was going to say he has won a race. I was going to say that's why when I said in recent form, that's why I'd say that he isn't really much between him and Hamilton. I know early on,
he's
100%.
31 points behind, which is more than a race victory, which obviously is.
I feel like Charles Leclerc is like a credit score where you missed a payment at no fault of your own. So you ring up the credit agency and your credit score is plummeted by 500 points because of one missed payment in 10 years. You ring them up and you say, hang on a minute here, man. That's not my fault. I changed bank accounts and it took it out of the old account. So then they say, oh, sorry, Mr. Knight, we'll take that back off your credit score. And your credit score goes back up by 500 points. So that's how he's jumped, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't something that recently happened to me. I'm not bitter about it, So what? I had a perfect credit score, and one missed payment in like 15 years takes 500 points off your score. And you've got to ring people up, spend a load of money, a load of time, chasing them down, opening cases, getting them to try it again, and then they do. And I mean, I just said they put it back up 500. No, they don't. They put it up 300 because how's that work? I'm going to deduct you 500 points because you didn't actually miss a payment at no fault of your own. But when I actually take it back off because it should be at no fault of your own, I'm only going to give you 300 points back. What kind of arsehole company are you, British Gas? Had to be a rant in there somewhere.
But I don't know where to go with that. British Gas
Charles is a credit score. He's just so. This season, he's so spontaneously combustible in both directions, and he can go from a D to almost a B for me, and we've then both settled on a C, and we seem to be at the other ends of that, and that's great. So yeah.
So what's his favourite era then?
His era, we've done Hamilton, haven't we? So his era. I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Actually, I mean, he was very consistent in the ground effect era, a bit like Sainz.
He was very consistent in the Highway era.
He was, and outperformed Vettel. I would say that he maybe come of age naturally, probably in the ground effect era, but I don't know if we've actually found Charles's best era yet. Like if he wins a world championship in this one, it could be down to the car combination of him and the car, but also it could be because he quite likes it. He's probably been on one. I think he's probably been in the driver camp this year of not having a great time. with the car and finding it more difficult. Clearly Hamilton finds this probably better than he does, easier than he does. Whether it's purely the energy deployment of things, or maybe it was simply just the brakes or whatever with that car, or amongst other things. I mean, what we don't ever mention in these podcasts is actually just real life shit. The guy got married. The guy spent 25 million on a yacht that probably wasn't even worth 25 mil. He probably had buyer's remorse for a few weeks. Who knows what happened, in his personal life. But, people don't necessarily always think about that you're human. You can just be having a bit of a funny couple of months, so, we forget about that. So I just think that he, I don't think he stood out. He could fall into that category of just being a very thoroughly decent driver throughout many different regulations, and therefore he hasn't specifically got an era. But maybe we're waiting for one for him, perhaps.
I think everybody's waiting for that.
Or he just have an all rounder, or he just always remain an all rounder.
Well, don't forget he was nicknamed. I can't remember what the Italian is, predestano or something, but it means the predestined. He was nicknamed the predestined after he won at Monza in, I want to say 2019, because they said that he is predestined to win a world championship with Ferrari, and here we are all these years later, and we're still waiting for him to get anywhere even close. So I think the answer is there, that we're still waiting, and that I think his best years, if they're going to happen, they're obviously in front of him, and if they don't happen, then it'll be a career perhaps unfulfilled. But that's kind of where we are with him at the moment. So I wouldn't put him in any year, like you say.
No, like I say, there's no sort of rule that you have to label one of these guys with. It's more of the question of, like, some of them really, really take to a set of regulations and just purely suit it. Like, and the ones that probably stand out most are a Max with the ground force era and maybe his driving style, and Lewis Hamilton in his hybrid era, and how the cars, and how Mercedes, again, it's a combination of things. Obviously, put Hamilton in a crap car in the hybrid era, you're not having this conversation, are you? But he seemed to have clicked in that time. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hamilton in the V10 era was pretty awesome,
Right. I mean,
as I keep saying,
ever,
my favourite rookie season ever.
So,
and I think he admits himself that that's his favourite car and his favourite kind of time. So, just to say, because he won most of his world championships in the hybrid era, does not mean that actually he was the best. That was the best Hamilton. That was the most successful Hamilton. But you give me 2006, 2007 Lewis Hamilton, and I'd take that over most years, I reckon. And if you give him then every dominant car in eras past that, could have been even better, maybe. I don't know, that kind of nothing to lose young attitude that so many drivers kind of lose as they mature and get older. It's a great combination. Youth, as we will get to with the next driver in the next team. Mercedes, then. Well, probably the easiest one, because you can't not really give the team, I suppose, an A star, can you? I mean, they are leading by a margin. They have not been competitive, certainly to winning championships in the last 5 years.
Yep.
And they've just come out and gone, boom. So
there is one teeny tiny little argument which we talked about before, which is the reliability factor. That Mercedes has had reliability issues, and I don't think that they've been bulletproof in terms of their strategy either. And I think that they could be a lot further ahead than they are.
Do you know what? I suppose. Yeah, they're both their drivers of first and second. You could probably make an argument of A star. So I will quickly retract that. Actually,
But I think
and
just to
probably
just
go with
then to recounter that, everything that you said, this is a team that have been nowhere for 5 years, that we know have incredible pedigree with the previous generation of cars, and they've come back. And it's not as simple as just be like, well, they're a great team. Of course, they'll come back, because that's not a given. I mean, look where Williams are. It's
Ferrari.
Ferrari, right? Exactly. So there's plenty of examples of a team being at the top and losing that spot, and then not just getting it back within 5 years. So it is a hugely successful story for them, and I think in terms of the car that they've produced, it is an A star. They've absolutely knocked it out of the park. But then just that little reliability, those little things. Yeah, and I think if they were first and second, I think it's harder to take the A star away from them. But for me, it's A star preparation, A execution.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm
agreed,
giving them an
agreed.
A just about.
Yeah. Halfway through the season, if they win the championship and they've got two chaps sitting first and second, you've
Hard
got
to
to give them
argue.
got to give them an A star at the end of the season, haven't you?
Hard to argue.
So we go to Russell first. Then.
Sure, it's the sensible way to go.
Um,
What do you do with a problem like George Russell? I think you've got to break down his season into his half season, because it's certainly not over yet.
It's
Into
his fault.
into three.
Team's fault.
I think you've
Well,
got to
his
break it
fault,
down into
team's
three.
fault.
The first race, the first even maybe couple of races.
Hold up. Can we just? I can't believe we've started. Can we just give George a little round of applause for his engagement?
Oh yeah, well done, George.
Because he's gone out. He's spent the big bucks. It's a rock.
It is. Yeah.
And look, did he do it to make himself feel better about the season, or is it true love? Look,
You cynical bastard.
Whatever it is,
it might be
amazing
both.
news for him.
It might
Amazing
be
news
both.
for him. I'm only joking, George. If you're listening, obviously, you might be listening.
He definitely is.
So if you're listening, George, that was a joke. Wish you all the best, my friend. And I actually think that why wouldn't it give you a great boost leading into the second half of the season? I'm sure that your fiance is ecstatic to be marrying a millionaire F1 driver, and I'm sure that that will hopefully give you a lovely boost, knowing that you've got a beautiful lady on your arm that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And what a world championships when you've got your dream partner. So
exactly.
So I hope that this could spark him up and he can have a resurgence and into the title battle. But back to his current grading of the first half of the season, you were saying sorry.
I was just saying, if you break it into three, he had a great start to the season. It's very easy to forget that now, but he had a great start. Had a couple of reliability issues, which weren't his fault. So I think the first two races, 2.5 with the sprint race in China, I think he was performing absolutely brilliantly. And at that point, even though Antonelli had managed to, obviously get some points on the board, I think we all thought pretty comfortable at that point that this was Russell's championship. Then the second part of the season seemed to be his fault. The wheels falling off. Maybe Antonelli got a little bit lucky with a safety car in Japan, but Russell certainly didn't cover himself in tons of glory during that period. And then the last half of the season seems to have been, is it his fault? Is it not his fault? What's going on with the state of the charge? Is it the algorithm? Is he not getting on board with the algorithm? What's going on there? I think he's, a certain point, is to blame for that, but also, he's learning this new car and these algorithms and all of those things. Are the team helping him as much as they could be? So many questions there. But I think if you
can the team be as focused on him when they've got someone who's won 5 or 6 races.
And he's the young boy, and he's the prince that was chosen. And Max Verstappen 2.0. He's the one that got away, but this one they're not going to let get away, and they're going to treat him like the absolute king that they wish that they were able to treat Max like. And so there's so much there. Look, I think if you park all of that kind of noise and just purely look at the table, and you go, he's got the best car, and he's in third. He's behind Lewis Hamilton, who he should be beating by his own admission. He should be beating Lewis because that's where he places himself. That's how he graded himself when they were together at Mercedes. And when
he would have had 2 world championships.
And when you look at the fact that he is 59 points behind his teammate, which is, I believe, the biggest gap on the grid. And you've got to go, there's not a pass in there. That's not a pass. He wouldn't call it a pass.
You are, the word we haven't used yet is momentum. It's so difficult in sport. And I consider myself a multi-sport fan. And many sports fans irritate me because, especially football fans, and this thing of that on one hand, I love the fact that you have this expectation that you should win every year, whether that's win every fight as a boxer, win every match as a tennis player, win every game in football. I think is an incredible mentality to have, and a desire and a drive to be able to do that. But the reality is that in so many sports, there's many things that are out of your control. You cannot control other people, for instance. If other people improve, then they can then push you to improve, and that's then on you to then remain at the top, to remain better. But I think that the hardest thing to do is to get that momentum back, whether it's over the course of a season, whether it's over the course of a match, over the course of a race. Obviously, the shorter time you have, it is the hardest, to get the momentum back. But, you see it so many times, to compare it again, as we like to like in tennis, where when it's a 5-set match, it's a mental how the person can win 2 sets, and the momentum can shift in set 3. And you almost go, well, that person's only won 1 set, but they've won. I think there's like a stat that they then sort of almost have a better opportunity to then finish the match. Like, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, all that kind of stuff. And the momentum just shifts, and they can then go off to then win 3 sets on the bounce. And I feel like Russell has gone into the season with the momentum, knowing that I'm ready for this. I'm the lead driver. I'm the experienced driver. I've been a 7-time world champion twice. All I've needed is the car. He gets the car. He's very chirpy. We've spoke about it. We've joked about it. He's basically won the world championship before the race started, and then he wins the first race. It's all good. It's all great. Completely just loses momentum. In some ways, no fault of his own and things. The kid with no fear gets going, gets the momentum, takes that momentum. He now can't get it back off him, because to get the momentum back, not only do you need to perform at your top level, you also then need your teammate, your competitor, your rival to then drop off, because he could be racing really well, Russell, but if Anthony's always finishing ahead of him, then you're not doing anything to him. You're not taking that momentum back. So it's such a hard thing to get back, and Norris did it over such a long period last season with Oscar. And obviously his coach and that spoke about that at the end of the year, about just, it's almost like that, just one race at a time, very much going back to basics. Teams do this when they're facing relegation. It's like, well, hang on, we need to just try to claw back the momentum little bit by little bit. I feel like Russell has tried to get it back too quick, in weekends. Like he almost wants to overturn a
He
30
he wants
lead
to
deficit in
blow.
one race.
He wants to blow the doors off and just absolutely dominate a
Yeah,
weekend.
where he's just got to do what Max did last year, which was 5 points here, 10 points there,
Right.
5 points there.
And
And chip
like
away at it.
Antonelli, for example, didn't have the best Hungarian Grand Prix, and yet beat his two rivals, one of which obviously is Russell.
Yeah, that's where you then need to
And
put in
that's where
the
you've
kind
got to be.
of
You don't need to win the race. The McLaren was the better car that weekend, but you need
yeah.
to start building that momentum. And George just didn't have any of it. And the tricky,
You,
I mean,
you need to
the
punch it.
reason tennis is such a fascinating match, and the reason it's different to sport, is because until you get over the line, it's never done.
No,
Whereas Kimi has the advantage now that actually this isn't a 5-set match, right? This is that he has to go and he needs to win a third set. Kimi doesn't need to win another race this season. If he finishes second in every single race, he probably comfortably wins the world title because George isn't going to win
yeah.
all of them. And so that Kimi just doesn't need to win another set. He just needs to not. He just needs to score enough points to get over the line at the end of what is effectively a timed game
Yeah,
rather
which is
than a
what makes
points
it
game.
so much
He
harder when
makes it
it's like
so hard. In tennis,
a points lead.
tennis
It
momentum
re,
can
but it
swing point by
resets.
point, but
It resets, doesn't it? Every game, every match, every set, every game, it resets. Even shifting from serve to the other. You then on one game you have the advantage because you're the server. On the next game, you're then the receiver. So it's kind of funny that in F1 it's so much longer to get that momentum back. Like in tennis,
100%.
you can get it back from one game to another, a tie break, for instance. But he has to get in that mindset of like I'm in this for the long game, and he will. Kimi Antonelli, what he hasn't done so far this year is being able to put him under pressure because he's always just been that too far behind. Like if he was 10 points behind him and then it was 5 into the next race, this is what Lando did with Oscar was then thinking, oh, I was 25 points ahead and now I'm only 10 and now I'm only 5. And that starts to eat away at you. The pressure starts to build. You can see this person is getting better in themselves. Even if you finish ahead of them and you go from, oh, I'm 10 points ahead and now this weekend, oh, I'm now 15. It's like, but it's not much. I only got 5 points more than this
Yeah, I
weekend,
drove
even
the
though I'm still
wheels
winning the
off the
championship.
bloody car, and I still only gained a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
And actually, like he almost had that in that Kimi obviously had a couple races without scoring, and he almost kind of wrestled that back without doing anything, like without
But
himself really
even,
deserving it. But
but
then
like in
he's let
Canada,
it slip again.
in Canada, when he won Canada, didn't he? And Kimi did no, sorry, no.
No,
George
Kimi
George
won it.
didn't finish, did he?
George
And
did the DNF. Yeah.
but what was the race where was it Miami where he won it because Kimi um, had an engine failure,
Yes.
but everyone knew that Kimi was faster. Everyone knew that actually you weren't going to win that. So even though he won it, he couldn't go home that night and go, "Yes, I've
Right.
got the points on it." He's going into it going like, "Oh yeah, I've got the points." But
But what he needed
he
to
was
do
quicker than
after
me.
that weekend, what he really like, so that, like the gap came, like you said, the gap came down, but it never felt like actually the momentum was with him. But if he'd have then backed that up with a weekend where he was as good as Antonelli, didn't have to be
Yeah,
better than him, but just as good as him, then I think that Antonelli goes, damn, my gap's gone, and now he's as good as me, and that puts a bit of pressure on. But he really let, and maybe it's not his fault, maybe it's the car, whatever. But like Antonelli never felt that pressure because like as soon as the next race comes along, George was just off it all weekend, and for the last X number of races now, it seems like in every practice session, in qualifying, George would finally put in a lap that would put him on a par with Antonelli, and Antonelli would be like, "Here's half a second more, mate." And that just seems to be the pattern that we've gotten into with the last, what feels like, I mean, we've only had 11 races, haven't we? It feels like it's been the last 11 races, but I guess it's been the last sort of 4 or 5. But yeah, George desperately needs some momentum back.
Yeah, he's not got any of it, and so back to the gradings. Then he hasn't got a pass because he's not earned a pass. He's probably. I mean, considering he was the championship favourite, I'd say
He's won 2
I'd say
races and his teammate has won 6. And if you're the championship favourite, that's you.
I
Whatever
mean,
mitigating
there's.
circumstances you want, that's just not good enough, is it?
I'm trying to be kind. He's had some bad luck. He's also. I mark him down because of his. I mean, he should have been confident, but I don't think that helped him. That he was a bit too much of an excitable bunny. I think that for someone who I thought was very mentally strong, that has been a bit of a weakness this year. You've
It
seen that
has.
in him, and like I said, this is no dig at all, but just tearing up in press conferences and things like that. Like he really
He's
needs
letting
to
it.
get a grip of that.
He does. And actually, you know what I
You
thought as
know,
well? I was thinking this whilst I was preparing for this pod that he said something which was an absolutely fine point to make, which is he basically said when he lost a few points to Kimmy, and he said, it's not losing 5 points here or 3 points there that I need to worry about. As long as I'm still racking up points, it's the no pointers that I can't afford. And then we joked, obviously next weekend he goes out and no pointers it, and like it was a perfectly fine point to make, but I almost feel like he set himself up for that. And then
you
when it
start
when it
talking about
and
things
when
and
it
they start happening.
manifested, it's now like, well, you've just told us that you can't afford this, so it must be over then, right? And like that's really put him at
It's almost talking too much. What Lando did last year was actually
shut
just shut
up.
up
Yeah,
and
and
just was like,
George
you
could
know,
do well to do that. And you said that
yeah,
I think at the end of our last pod that that's what George really needs to do. And yeah,
yeah.
but he's look, he's had a very long break now. Like you say, he's had some good news. I think. I mean, I don't know where you were going with your grading, but for me, it's a D. It's a
Yeah, I
D
was going D. I was
minus.
going D. I was going D. Yeah, I was toying with D and E, and I thought, he's won 2 races, and he's been unlucky. I'm trying to take everything into account. Yes, there's things that he can improve on, but the guy's been unfortunate in some ways. In some ways, I felt so sorry for him. In other ways, he's infuriated me. So it's a real mixed bag. But
Yeah.
um, I,
D
I think a
minus.
D is fair, and he needs to finish second
He
to get a
needs,
pass.
in my opinion, if he finishes second this season, he probably doesn't do much better than a C.
Yeah,
If he wins the world championship, or actually, I won't even say wins. If he gets into a point where it looks like, because we've written him off now, right? If he can get to a point where it looks like he's got a genuine, real chance, he's within one race victory of Antonelli, and he really is actually putting some pressure on him. If he can do that in the second half of the season, he'll get an A for the second half of the season, and maybe even an A star. And I
I mean, yeah, I
genuinely
mean, look,
think he
if he
can do
comes
it.
back, if he comes back and wins this world championship,
Oh,
second half of the season, he get an
it'd
A
be an A
star
star, yeah, for
because
sure.
you couldn't have made it harder for yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, 100%. I mean, and then yeah, moving on to Antonelli, it's going to be pretty short and sweet. The kid's literally, you know, 1 year after his rookie season into a whole new rule set, dealing with the likes of Verstappen, world champion Norris, 7 world champion Hamilton, you know, this year's crowned world champion before the season started, Russell, uh, and he's whipping them all, and solidly performing so well. So he has to go down easily. Obviously, shortest conversation in the whole wide world as an A star.
100%.
Um,
Genuinely the only thing that you can say, well, there are two things you can say. Number one, it's been too easy for him, but that's not his fault.
Not
And
his
the
fault.
only other thing that you can say is that he's had nothing to lose because, this was George's championship to win, and therefore it's a bit of a free hit for him. But again, that's not his fault. So it's an easy A star. He has done a phenomenal job, and he needs his second half of the season to be unremarkable, and he walks this title.
Yeah, I mean, he could literally finish. I mean, you were saying he needs to finish second in races. I think he could just finish
Podium.
third
Yeah.
in most races, and then fourth here and there, because I don't see Russell, Lewis always getting first and second. So it's a driver would have to go on a run of winning 2 or 3 races to really make a dent in something here. And I just don't see any other driver other than Antonelli winning 3 races in a row. I don't think that any. I could see a driver winning 2 races in a row, but I cannot see a driver winning. I mean, no one's going to be shocked if Hamilton wins 2 in a row. No one's going to be shocked if Russell wins 2 in a row. Norris wins 2 in a row. If Red Bull get their crap together and Max wins 2 in a row, no one's going to be shocked by that. But I don't honestly see a driver winning 3 races in a row. I
No.
mean, I don't even know if I see Antonelli winning 3 races in a row again. He's had his run where he had like that unbelievable run, but I think now that the McLaren boys are closer, now that Red Bull are getting closer, I feel like Russell can only improve in the second half of the season. Ferrari, if they continue doing what they're doing, I just don't see one driver winning 3 in a row.
I
Again,
think to really to labour that point a little bit, you look at the races, you go Dutch Grand Prix, so Zandvoort, probably quite similar to Hungary. You can see Norris maybe getting a second win, but then it's the Italian Grand Prix, right? So totally different. Do you see, then you go to Spain, then you go to Azerbaijan. They're totally different to each other. Then you potentially go to Bahrain, but that's the Bahrain's back on, but it's Bahrain sponsored by Malaysia. So the Malaysian track, that's totally different again. Then you've got Singapore, back to a street circuit. Then you've got the US, which is Texas, which is totally different again. So there's no, you're completely right. There's no point here where one car that suits a particular type of track gets that type of track a few races in a row and therefore can dominate. And so that momentum that we're talking about so much here, and it is massive, no one driver is going to be able to build up momentum. And yeah, can I see Norris winning 3 or 4 of those races, or Hamilton winning 3 or 4 of those races, or whatever? Yeah, I can. Can I see George winning 3 or 4 of those races? Yeah, absolutely, I can. But can I see them doing it in a row and in such a way that the gap comes down quickly enough that Kimi,
you add the pressure, yeah.
the pressure comes on and maybe the wheels come off Antonelli? I don't see that happening. And each race is literally slow circuit, fast circuit, street circuit, track circuit. There's no consistency at all over the last part of the season. And obviously we've also then got a potentially shorter season too. Who knows what's happening with Qatar and Abu Dhabi? But with a potentially shorter season, that just makes it harder for anybody else who thinks that they're catching back up. So
You know what? Looking at that run of fixtures, actually, if Charles could get a result at Zandvoort, strong at Italy, street circuit at Spain, street circuit at Azerbaijan, if he those next 4 races, I would not be surprised if Charles is second in the championship.
yeah,
If he could put a run, that's why I worry a little bit. Like for Lewis, is that there's a few circuits there. Again, you're looking for that pattern of like on the bounce kind of thing. I mean, but then you then look at Bahrain, Singapore, United States, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas. You could argue that Hamilton could then punch back and go literally Singapore, Ferrari always strong at Singapore. Uh, Texas, Hamilton loves Texas, Mexico,
he's had good
Brazil,
because they're
Hamilton
Brazil.
loves
I mean,
Brazil.
Brazil, God bloody hell,
Las Vegas, high speed track again. Charles and Hamilton will be strong there. I mean, it's going to be exciting. Definitely going to be a really exciting second half of the season. I think the second half of the season, I will make a bold claim now and say I think it will be, maybe it's obvious, better than the first half. I think that upgrades are going to be coming. Teams are closer, yes, but I think that we can get some really juicy races there.
I
But
think
sadly,
I think the second half of the season, race to race, I think the races will be brilliant. I think you're going to miss out on your title fight, and I think it'll be like you said, it'll be interesting. The battle for second,
There's some
and the
great,
constructors, whatever. But there'll be some great races. There's some really great races in there.
done.
So
as Azerbaijan always chucks up something. Obviously, Madrid is new, so like this will be interesting. The Singapore, obviously the heat, night race. Texas is always great.
Brazil's always got a bit of weather in it as well.
Yeah, Brazil's got the weather.
Vegas has got the cold.
Corner.
Vegas has got the cold nights,
low
grip circuit, all of that.
Abu Dhabi's got the fix.
Yeah,
that's got the fixing.
If it happens, I mean, I don't hold much hope that those will happen. But
Abu Dhabi's got his made up rules, so that's always chucked in the mix.
Anything can happen.
Okay, so our ranking. Oh, so did we give Charles a ranking? Oh no, sorry, not Charles. Did we give Antonelli? Oh, we gave him an A-star.
We gave him an A-star, and we said, I mean, for the eras, Kimi is this one. For George, it's clearly not this one. So it's probably the ground effect. So far, that's really all he's been around in. Easy peasy.
Exactly. Yeah. And so predictions then for Zandvoort. Quick predictions.
Right. We'll do them real quick.
5-hour pod.
This is the most ridiculous pod we've done. Okay, so it's got to be. It was daylight when you started this. All right, top three.
Probably could have done this in 2 parts, but there we go.
Top 3. I'm gonna. Well, we haven't got time for that, have we? Okay, I'm gonna go. I think Lando will do well. I think then the Ferraris will also do well. So I'm gonna go Lando, Lewis, Kimi as my top 3.
Lando, Lewis, Kimi. Okay, just pure shits and giggles. I think we're going to kick off the second half of the season. Absolute just kamikaze. I think it's going to be a double DNF for Mercedes. I think we're going Norris for a second win in a row. We're going Charles second, Max third.
There we go. Okay, and then a rando top 10.
Rando top 10. I think that bit of time off. Rando top 10. I will go for a solid, a rather boring. I'm going to give it to one of the Haas boys, actually. I don't know why. I don't know. I got nothing. I was going to say Hulkenberg, and I thought it's just so boring. I'm going out there. No reason why. Ollie Behrman.
Ollie Behrman. That was also my pick.
Oh, okay. Fair enough then.
So we've gone the same on that one.
Ollie Behrman, right.
Fantastic.
And then any title winner then. We're both agreed you cannot see anything other than the Kimi champion.
No, Kimi champion. Mercedes have got their constructors pretty much with a bow on top at the moment as well. So championship.
So second. Bold statement right now. Who's finishing runner up?
I think George.
You think George?
I think it can't be as bad as it has been, and it's been pretty bad, and he's only 9 points behind second, so it only needs to improve a little bit for him to get back ahead of Lewis. And I think, so I'm going to go George. And actually, really cheeky prediction. I think Lando's going to finish third.
Do you know what? I was about to say, I think Lando might finish second.
Oh, Lando for second. I mean, that's ballsy. Yeah. I don't think he's quite got enough for second, but okay. I definitely
think the two, I don't know if I'm just getting, because people always do this, don't they, when they support that team or that driver.
Yeah.
I so badly want Hamilton to have a title charge. I'm so scared of Charles Leclerc, though. you're very confident that he's just got his number this year, and I'm
I
not
am
really
very
there.
confident. I think Lewis will beat. I
I
think Lewis will beat Charles,
I am worried about
but I think Lando will
Charles,
beat Lewis. I think the
and
McLaren will
I
come good.
and, and I would say the two to watch in the second half of the season would be Norris and Charles, and a third, fairly obvious. It's been boring to say, if Red Bull sort out and become a bit more competitive, I can, out of any driver, I can see Max just having a stupid Max run again.
Yeah.
But as it currently stands, Red Bull are not where McLaren or Ferrari are, and clearly not where Mercedes
No,
are.
exactly. I
So
actually
I will say the two to watch: Charles and Norris.
part of me wanted to say that I think Max is the sort of guy who could win in Zandvoort, but because the car's nowhere near, but we've had 4 weeks, like like maybe that could happen. But based on where things were when we left Formula One, it's just not on. As good as he is, that's not on the cars, and I don't think the Red Bull particularly suits Zandvoort either. So I really don't think that we'll see that happen. But again, if anyone can, Max is the one guy you can't rule out. Well, there we
Yeah,
go. I
no,
think that's
there we go.
everything for this podcast. Am I correct?
Yes,
That, that was, if you've managed to make it this far, listener, or even you, Ryan, or me, Morgan, if we've managed to listen to our own podcast for the full length of this, then we've done pretty well. So thank you very much for listening / watching, however you've been consuming this podcast. We have been barely qualified. Not sure if you could tell, but we have been barely qualified to talk about Formula One. But we've talked about it nonetheless at a considerable length just for you. And we do it free of charge, gratis. You're welcome. We'll see you. We'll see you after Zandvoort. And yeah, let's hope for one hell of a bonza Dutch Grand Prix. Over and out, Toodles.